Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto and Sakura Were the Only Shinobi Left Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. The rumblings of the earth finally stopped as the hulking mass of the Shukaku melted away, forming large sand deposits in the forest landscape. Heavy smoke filled the air, obscuring all visibility for a time, a result of the giant frog Naruto had somehow summoned vanishing. Coughing into his hand, his muscles screamed in complaint, Sasuke finally rose to his feet. His eyes scanned the area where the giant earthen monstrosity stood over the canopy moments before. Focusing at the treetops, his eyes caught a distorted shape of orange. There he is. He watched as the figure leapt and clashed with his red-haired opponent, knocking him to the ground. The soft sound, alike that of an hourglass pouring its contents, alerted him, and he quickly jerked around. A small pile of the fine sand was gathered at the bottom of the trunk of a large tree, and he glanced upward at the source. The disfigured appendage that pinned Sakura to the tree was rapidly dissipating. Despite aching muscles, Sasuke leapt, catching his pink-haired teammate before she collided with the ground. Naruto may need help. He set her on the ground carefully, turning to the small dog that accompanied Sakura and Naruto and shared in witnessing the spectacular fight only moments before. Watch her. Ignoring the pain and soreness that raged through his system, the raven-haired shinobi dashed along the ground of the trees, and with a burst of speed reached a small clearing where Naruto was crawling on his belly toward his opponent. He is still fighting. If he was accustomed to showing emotion, he may have gasped at the sight of the brilliant blue of Naruto's eyes. They were slitted and held a determination he was not sure he'd ever witnessed before. But also in that hard gaze he saw a deep pain he was all too familiar with. He knelt down and whispered to his friend, who, if he had not witnessed what he had done, would have thought of him as pitifully crawling. You can stop now, Naruto. Sakura's fine now. He must be out of chakra, too. Since the sand holding Sakura has released her. I see. The blonde muttered out, and upon completion of his words, rested his head down. Sasuke knew he had endured great pain that fight, yet could only hide yet more surprise when Naruto's face took on a serene smile as he fell into a deep exhaustion-induced slumber. Just what are you, Naruto? The siblings of Gaara appeared in front of their younger brother protectively, tense and ready to fight. He heard Gaara's voice mutter something to his siblings, causing them to relax and confusedly stare at him in wonder. Gathering their junior brother up, they stared at the two Konoha shinobi in awe before quickly departing. Sasuke slung his teammate over his shoulder, and hauled him back to where he left Pakun and Sakura. Much damage had been done to the trees, and he made slow progress walking on the ground with his heavy load. Much of the dirt had turned to mud, with many puddles of varying sizes marking the site of the powerful water jutsus of that gigantic frog. He deliberately avoided the many deposits of sand, mud, and water, considerably slowing his pace. Finally, he reached the clearing where his fight with Gaara had first begun. He set down Naruto next to Sakura's slumbering form. Pakun moved over to the blonde and questioned the young Uchiha. Is he alright? Sasuke nodded, and looked toward where Konoha lay. Many of the trees had been uprooted or smashed altogether, granting him visions of tall plumes of smoke off in the distance. He's just reached his limit. He'll be okay after some rest. What in the world is happening? The pug sat quietly, staring over the unconscious forms of Naruto and Sakura. The Sound and Sand villages have appeared to have allied and used the exams as cover for a combined assault. The leaf is strong though, and its shinobi will fight to the death to protect its people. Sasuke sat quietly, deep in thought. His mind was troubled at the turmoil of the day's events. His eyes traced over Naruto, and jealousy gripped at heart. Just what did you do? How did you get so strong? I'm the Uchiha. The dog broke the still quiet. I would not have believed Naruto could fight like that if I hadn't seen it myself. That boy is the most surprising ninja I have ever met. Sasuke grit his teeth, and nodded solemnly. He counted slowly in his head, and gripped one hand over the burning pain in the side of his neck. Trying vainly to repress the bitter resentment he shouldn't be feeling over his friend that just saved all of their lives. Pakun sensed something was troubling the young Uchiha, but not what. Can you move well yet? Good. I will go seek out Kakashi, and tell him that his team is safe. I'll also find out how the fighting is going in the village and return to you. The small dog was about to depart when Sakura let out a soft whimper, and stirred. She leaned up, coughing hard and wincing, holding her chest with one arm. Groggily she opened her eyes, taking in her surroundings before mumbling. Sasuke-kun, you're okay. She sat up quickly, and grimaced in pain, lying back down. She noticed Naruto laying beside her, his only movement the slow rising and falling of his chest. Thanks, you saved us from the sand again, right? He looked away. Anger and jealousy bubbled within him at the searing pain in his neck and across the surface of his skin. No. She made a questioning sound. Naruto saved you. She looked positively confused and giggled slightly. Now, Sasuke-kun, you don't need to be so modest. It's true Naruto has gotten stronger, but he can't. Sasuke stared at her incredulously. She was completely unaware of the insult she had just thrown at him. His voice grew cold and distant, as he looked at the sleeping blonde. It's true. A brief silence, he considered his words. He fought with everything he had to save you. He even showed powers he's never shown before. The girl looked positively confused. Addressing the question to no one in particular, she asked casually, looking at the unconscious Naruto, he did. For me. Pakun, who was sitting quietly beside them, answered, yes, it's true. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't saw it. Naruto fought Gaara's monster form with only his own power. You have a good friend in him. Her eyes widened as she lay back considering the information. A fond smile formed on her face. The dog continued, standing to his feet. Now, I will go find Kakashi and get the status of the village. I will be back as soon as I can. You three should get rest for now. Do not move about too much. The brown dog then scampered out of the clearing into the trees back toward the Colosseum. The usual lush and full canopy of the forest surrounding Konoha was in a tattered state, reflecting but a shadow of its former splendor. The forest suffered as the latest battlefield for the gargantuan Shukaku and Gamabunta. Branches lay scattered about, trunks were shorn and splintered about the muddy ground from the excess water consumed during the battle, and a twisted cacophony of twisted, mangled and burnt leaves fluttered in the wind and blanketed the ground. Pakun scurried through the broken wood back toward the village of Konoha. Giving tentative sniffs at the air, the small pug attempted to analyze the plethora of scents, determining where nearby humans may be. He could not be sure whether he'd run into friend or foe, but caution was his only ally. It's no good, there are too many scents to discern from. His nose only caught the smells of burning wood and both fresh and drying blood. The distant smell of dank smoke overwhelmed his acute sense of smell. Reaching further into the forest, the damage of the trees considerably waned. That's a relief, not all of the forest is devastated. The pug continued through the more pristine brush, rapidly approaching his master's village. The tangled trees at the edge of the copse of wood were all that blocked his view, and as he leapt clearing the greenery, not even witnessing the Jinchuriki's titanic battle could prepare him for what he saw next. He slowly walked wide-eyed through the eerily still streets. Fires raged throughout the town, and scorch marks covered the road and piles of debris. What used to be tall and fair Konoha architecture were now little more than disorganized rubble. The streets were rent with damage, from giant ditches caused by huge beasts and the fires of intense battle. Where buildings collapsed and were thrown about, as if they were but toy building blocks a child would use, crushed and strewn across the streets in a temper tantrum. The dead lay about everywhere, many men and some women, struck down in their prime. Those with faces held cold death masks of expressions ranging from pure fear to utter denial of what was happening to them. The pale corpses lay about, some burned or dismembered that he could scarcely put together that they were once human. Among the dead that littered the streets, many wore the garb of the sound and sand attackers. However, the vast majority wore the vestments of the leaf, recognizable only as tattered green vests and the occasional forehead protectors laying about pierced and hacked torsos. This is terrible. Some fighting still ranged far in the distance, and Pakun prayed that the loss of life would not climb much higher this day. He knew the women and children would be scattered in special safe areas, with the highest guards, the chief of which would be the Hokage Mountain, which loomed over the burning and ruined town still vigilant. I have to reach Kakashi. The dog scurried through the outskirts of the town, refusing to use his sensitive nose over the overwhelming scent of burnt flesh and death. His pace was interrupted as the earth shook and roared. He stared up at the great Hokage Mountain. The faces of the legendary leaders of the leaf became distorted and cracked, as giant explosions rocked the landscape. Rubble began to pour down from the mountain. Pieces of the faces that watched over the village were now ironically crushing it. The villagers. Soon the ground finally stopped heaving against his shaky feet. Rocks still tumbled down, burying the many houses below. Then all was still save the dust and smoke of the devastated mountain. I can't do anything for them. Fear rose in the small dog. Would anyone survive this attack? Were the people hiding in the mountain okay? He hadn't seen any living beings since he entered the village. I fear the worst now. The tall stadium walls towered ahead of him, the surface marred with scorch marks from what could only have been caused by a rain of fire and lightning. Smoke billowed out from the top of the stadium and the stench of death was thick in the air. All the spectators of the exams. He scrambled into a crack and began climbing the flight of stairs to the lower seats of the stands. Pakun froze as he reached the entrance to the bleachers. So many men, women, and children, most of them civilians, lay still in unnatural and limp positions. Blood dripped down the floors, and his insides churned when he realized that all of these people in this section would never move again. All of their throats had been cut. The stunned dog stared at the ghastly sight, and eyes scanned the upper areas where he was originally summoned. All he could discern from his current vantage point were fast-moving blurs both on the arena floor and upper spectator seats. The clashing sounds of metal rang and echoed across the amphitheater. Some ninja are alive and fighting still here. Pakun did not notice the nin that approached behind him until he was on the receiving end of a powerful kick. The summoned dog spun into the wall, gasping for breath as he allowed himself to be unsummoned. Sasuke, Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi, I'm sorry but I cannot return to you. Live on. Hours had passed. Sakura laid back quietly against the uncomfortable ground. Her chest hurt, and she began to wonder if she had bruised or cracked ribs. An intense pain would happen whenever she moved her upper half or something brushed against the left side of her chest. Sasuke sat quietly, staring off into space with a faraway and cold look in his eye. She turned her head occasionally, seeing the sleeping Naruto, who was smiling. She wasn't sure if she believed what she had heard yet, despite both Sasuke and Pakun telling her. Naruto fought so hard, just for me. The thought echoed in her mind and she found herself unable to concentrate on much with the pulsing pain whenever she took too deep a breath. The forest was eerily quiet still, where usually the sounds of wildlife could be heard throughout the forests of Fire Country. She could only get a small glimpse of her surroundings, seeing the great damage to the trees and an abundance of unexplained water still dripping down some branches and leaves over scattered dunes not native to the local landscape. What could have happened that caused the many sizable limb-shaped craters and the giant tree trunks snapped in half? Her imagination couldn't begin to fathom. It's as if giant monsters ripped the area apart. He has been gone too long. I will go find help. Sasuke stood to his feet. She shivered, seeing the black marks were still covering his skin in random blotches. Sakura had grown used to accustomed cold demeanor, but something about him seemed darker than usual. His voice was devoid of emotion, more so than usual. She couldn't explain why she felt he kept staring at Naruto with his eyes brimming with a burning anger. A feeling deep inside her screamed that something was off with her crush. She struggled to lean on her arm, deciding it must have been from the fight with that monster. Another stab of pain went through her chest as she began to speak. Will we be okay, Sasuke-kun? He coolly nodded. Just stay low, I don't think anyone is looking for us yet. If I see the sign of anyone approaching, I will hurry back. She didn't even have time to reply as he dashed off. She settled back feeling alone, except for the slow breathing of the orange-clad nin to her side. Her body ached, and her mind was confused. Why were the sound and sand attacking us? The sand were our allies. Is Naruto going to be okay? And why hasn't Pakun returned? Is Kakashi-sensei still fighting at the arena? She whimpered again at the splitting headache, and huffed lying still flat on her back. She felt alone and afraid since Sasuke left and looked anxiously about at even the slightest sound, knowing that she would not be able to defend herself or Naruto. She felt her insides leap when her comrade groaned and started to sit up. Despite the pain in her chest, she couldn't help but give a joyful yell at him. Naruto, you're awake. He looked about, pushing himself to his knees. Seeing her lay next to him looking at him, he smiled widely, and she felt warm just basking in that grin. Sakura-chan, you're okay. Where's Sasuke? Where's Gaara? She furrowed her brow, still laying back. Sasuke-kun went to check out the village a few minutes ago. He said he'd be back soon. Pakun left hours ago to do the same. I'm worried, Naruto. He struggled to get to his feet. She couldn't remember seeing Naruto so exhausted before. Sasuke will be okay. He can take care of himself. Are you hurt, Sakura-chan? He just woke up and he seems more worried about me than anything. My chest really hurts when I move. I think I may have cracked or bruised a rib or two. She said with a frown. He looked over her worriedly. It's okay, Naruto. It's nothing that serious. It'll just be very painful for a while. Naruto, what happened after I got hit? He stared off into space over her. She couldn't help but wonder that he was trying to think of an excuse. She figured he would be bragging about beating Gaara and saving her, but he looked more troubled than anything. In a quiet and serious tone he began, I just fought to protect my precious people. I showed Gaara that real strength comes from protecting those that you care about. She pondered his words. Her first impression was to dismiss them as un-Naruto-like, but then maybe she just had never looked deeper into what her teammate really was before. She recalled the seriousness of his words in the Forest of Death, and his unbreakable will whenever danger presented itself to his team. His words to Neji came to mind as well. Maybe since he wasn't boasting about the win, trying to gain her favor only showed that she truly hadn't seen underneath his carefree and goofy exterior. I really don't know the real Naruto yet, do I? She only tilted her head toward him in a slight nod, and couldn't stop herself from giving him a fond, shy smile. She chuckled inwardly when she saw him blush and stammer and turn away. Feeling more at peace now with Naruto awake, she slowly yawned and adjusted her back cautiously on the ground. Naruto, I'm going to try to rest some. Mind keeping watch? Don't worry, Sakura-chan, I'll keep you safe. Believe it, I have no doubt you will, thanks, Naruto. She thought as she closed her eyes and allowed the exhaustion she felt take her into the world of slumber. Jumping through the trees, Sasuke followed the path he had pursued Gaara on back to his village. He had to get away from Naruto. The seal as his neck had continued to pulse the entire time. He knew Sakura was aware of the seal and some of its purpose, and he did his utmost to hide it from her prying personality. The deep-rooted anger in his heart was surfacing and his will to fight it was diminishing. When he finally reached the village he had called home, his eyes widened. The streets were torn, few buildings remained standing. Shinobi lay dead strung about like discarded dolls amidst the rubble and buildings. Their grim visages gave him startling flashbacks back to the night of the Uchiha massacre. He slowly walked through the street, passing the blank stares of faces, a scarce few he recognized seeing around the village on occasion. The memories of his family ate at his core. He looked skyward toward the great mountain. Where just earlier that day the stern faces of the Hokages looked over the village was now just a cracked and devastated cliffside. Glancing about, he realized that the village could never recover from this. Almost no buildings remained standing, the many houses and shops crushed by falling rocks, giant beasts, or consumed by flames or other powerful ninjutsus. He stared emotionlessly across the desolate rubble. Looking upward, he questioned how he could feel so detached from all of the death surrounding him. The stagnant smell of decay and carrion began to fill the air. He walked through the wreckage toward the stadium, with no real final destination in mind. A cackling and cold laughter behind him caused him to wheel about and stare at its owner. The pale mug of Orochimaru stood before him. He could only recognize the man by those horrid evil eyes. Eyes that seek power. The thought echoed throughout his being. Kukuku, we meet again, Sasuke-kun. The snake Sanin smiled grimly at him. Sasuke looked into his yellow eyes. You did this, you destroyed Konoha. You're quite astute, Sasuke-kun. But I have only just achieved one of my goals here this day. I now wish to offer you to become my apprentice. I can give you power that you cannot attain anywhere else. Looking about the rubble, he identified the remnants of the Hokage building, the discarded sign lying on top of a charred pile. There is no one left here to train me. Memories of his brother and his hatred toward the man roared in his heart. The seal on his neck pulsed and the marks across his body glowed and felt aflame. Foolish little brother, your hate isn't strong enough, his brother's words echoed again in his mind, and he looked to the destroyer of his village. You will give me power to beat Itachi. Orochimaru gave him a sinister smile, bowing before him. You have my word, Uchiha Sasuke. Come with me and you will gain what you seek in killing your brother. Something deep within his heart screamed for attention. A small concern for those that fought with him, his friends, one he began to think of as his best friend. From what I know about Orochimaru, he won't give up if I say no. If I return to Naruto and Sakura, he'll just kill them when he comes next. He thought carefully, and began to nod slowly. Yes, I will go with you. Nothing but killing him matters. But, I ask that you give me a few hours of leave first. The tall inhuman ninja smiled. That's quite gutsy of you to request already, but I see no harm. You have 3 hours, I shall await you here. The raven-haired nin nodded softly, and headed back to where he left his teammates. Shortly after, Kabuto landed next to his master. You sure it's wise to let him leave without being watched, Orochimaru-sama? He only got an amused smile in reply. Sasuke-kun will return. I am now his only option for the path he has chosen. I'll let him take care of whatever business he sees fit before we go. The silver-haired medic nodded in acquiescence. Sasuke soon found himself clambering through the damaged woods back to where he left his team. Reaching the clearing, he saw Naruto was sitting upright, his back propped against a tree looking over a sleeping Sakura. Sasuke, you're back. He replied to the blonde. I came to tell you that Konoha is gone, destroyed by Orochimaru. Naruto gripped onto his pants tightly and stood up, his eyes alight with emotion. What? Destroyed? How can you say that with so straight a face? What do we do now, Sasuke? Where's Kakashi-sensei? He grunted at his emotional ex-teammate. I don't know where Kakashi or anyone else is. As for what you can do, I don't know. I came to tell you that the village is gone and that I am going to join Orochimaru. You and Sakura need to get on with your lives. He was slightly startled when the blonde catapulted from his seat, lifting him by his shirt with one arm, his arm trembling. Anger filled his eyes. He growled out, Sasuke-tem, how could you even joke about that? Joining the enemy who just destroyed our village. He merely shrugged at his friend, not really caring that he was lifting him up. Then a fist collided into his face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Naruto stood over him, breathing heavily, his arms shaking. You're not joking. Why, Sasuke? Why would you betray everyone like that? What about your friends? Sasuke stood up and growled. Why doesn't the dolt understand? He'll just die if I stay, betrayed. There's nothing left. My only goal is to kill my brother, and now only Orochimaru can make that a reality. Bonds and friendship only make you weak. As of now, I'm breaking all of those bonds. Anger surged in him, and his skin felt aflame. The black blotches alighted like small fires that danced across his flesh. He reached out, this time lifting Naruto by the cuff of his jacket. He could tell the blonde was near exhausted to death from his earlier fight. Tears began to sting his eyes. You bastard, why would you turn your backs on us like that, Sasuke? What could cause you to do this? I acknowledge you're strong, Naruto. But you know nothing of my pain. My entire family was killed by my brother, and he left me alive to be an avenger. It is my only purpose to kill him. How would you, who never had a family, understand? Naruto stared him in the eye. I may not have ever had a family, but when I think of Iruka-sensei, I wonder if that's what it's like to have a father. And Sasuke, I thought of you as a brother. Sasuke's grip loosened slightly, memories of his rivalry with Naruto. The good and bad times, and he smiled grimly, letting out a cold chuckle. I have to admit that you've become my best friend, Naruto. As soon as he uttered his words, memories of his brother sprung to the forefront of his mind, and the curse began to pulse. Foolish little brother, your hate is not strong enough. You must kill your best friend. The darkness that began to chip away at his heart today had consumed his heart at more rapid rates since his meeting with the renegade Sannin. The fierce pain in his neck only fueled his anger and lust for vengeance. Holding Naruto up, he began to charge at Chidori in his right hand instinctively. I will have more power. The Mangekyo is in my reach. Naruto stared at him as if he didn't know him. He cackled at his friend. Goodbye, Naruto, it was fun. Sasuke pulled back, his hand charged with electricity ready to strike. Tears fell from Naruto's eyes. Sasuke, you're becoming what you hate so much. He began to thrust his hand forward. Are you worse than your brother? The words wrenched out of Naruto, and he spoiled his own aim, impaling the left of his friend's chest from what would have instantly killed him. Letting him fall to the ground, he stared. No, I will get power my own way. I will not let my brother win. Naruto fell to the ground, a foot from Sakura, unconscious, bleeding from the terrible chest wound. The small voice in the depth of his heart that respected his friends who fought with him had clawed its way to the top. I will beat my brother, but I will get the power my own way. Thanks, Naruto. You have your path, and I have mine. It's for your own good. The cold Uchiha then left his unconscious ex-teammates to their fates and left to meet with his new master. A cool night breeze brought a sudden chill to the sleeping Kunoichi. Sakura reflexively rubbed her arms together at the cold air. She slowly rose, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. Her ribs still had a dull ache, and she began to examine her surroundings. Looking at the sky, she saw the stars and moon far overhead. How long have I been sleeping? Sasuke-kun should be back at least. Stifling a small yawn, she looked about when she saw Naruto on the ground a foot away from her. He was in a twisted position, facing away from her. Adjusting her eyes to the darkness of the moonlight, she noticed the grass below was stained a dark reddish brown. Is that blood? Snapping up, and groaning at the pain in her chest, she crawled over to her friend, gasping at the gaping hole in the front of his jacket. Crawling over his still form, she silently cursed the lack of light. What happened? Where's Sasuke? She checked his pulse. He was alive. She let out a relieved breath. Whoever hurt him must have just ran off, which frankly made no sense. Who would deliver a wound like that and not finish the job? She was easy meat sleeping next to him too. Her insides knotted, unable to fit together what happened. She gently rolled him upright, inspecting the wound. She winced at the jarring pain in her chest, but ignoring it. She pulled out some basic bandages and ointment she kept in her pouch. It was a deep wound, and should have killed him left open and bleeding. She looked closely. It appeared the skin had closed up some and cauterized itself. Both the jacket and his skin showed burn marks as if it was an electrical or fire-based piercing attack. Using a kunai, she cut a circle out of his shirt around the wound. Then, Sakura began to apply ointment to ward off infection. She didn't have much in the line of proper bandages, but used the bit she had to put over the closing wound. What happened to you, Naruto? She shivered in the cold of the night. She was alone and cold, in the dark, afraid. The last she saw her other friends and sensei, a massive war was breaking out. She started to gently shake the blonde, whispering in his ear. Naruto, wake up please. He stirred, groaning, and opened his eyes. Sakura-chan. Naruto, what happened? His right hand reached toward his wound, and she batted the hand away. Don't touch it, I just dressed it. Who did this to you, Naruto? He remained silent, looking grim, a sadness in his sapphire eyes. Why would he hesitate in telling me? That wound, the only attack that could cause something like that, the Chidori. Her insides turned to ice and she looked at Naruto. It was Sasuke, wasn't it? She fought off tears threatening to form. He didn't answer, just looking, staring flat on his back at the moon beyond her. She pressed, Naruto, tell me. He finally nodded, and she saw him cry for the first time. Sakura-chan, he said, Konoha is destroyed. He said there was nothing left. And that he was joining an Orochimaru. A sob choked out of him. He then said I was his best friend and used the Chidori. She burst into tears, her world had been turned upside down, and wrapped her arms around the blonde. Can that be true? He did seem so dark, the curse mark. Then what Naruto first said took hold in her mind. Our home is destroyed. What about my family, our friends? Ignoring the pain in her ribs, she held him tightly and cried into his chest. What are we going to do, Naruto? Is our home really gone? He lay still and slowly put an arm over her shoulder. She remained crying on him until the darkest hours of the night. Cold and tired, they used Naruto's jacket as a makeshift blanket and the wounded ninjas huddled together for warmth. You're all I have left, she whispered as she finally let exhaustion claim her once again. A bright flash of light and accompanying crash of thunder roared throughout the sky. The drum of a heavy rain reverberated throughout the ruined forest. The first drops dripping on the green canopy, falling in trickles to the branches and earth below. One such dribble of cool rain landing on a crop of pink hair lying on a warm black pillow, that slowly rose and fell. Startled at the sudden cold sensation, the owner of the hair blinked slowly and began to take in her surroundings. Sakura adjusted the makeshift orange blanket and memories from before slowly took hold. Another crash of thunder startled the girl, and she tightened her grip on the warm form beneath her. Sakura-chan. The questioning tone came from a voice next to her. She slowly rose, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. That's right, I fell asleep on Naruto. She blushed at the closeness of their bodies, looking away. They had huddled together for shared body warmth, and she was vaguely aware she now had his tattered jacket around her shoulders. Her head pounded with severe migraine, and her chest was sore. She rose to her knees, and regretted that she was no longer pressed against her friend who had an inexplicably warm body heat. Another stab of pain in her chest caused the kunoichi to slowly brush her hand gently along her ribs, wincing in pain upon the contact. Remembering Naruto had also received a wound, she glanced down at the lying blonde, and checked the bandages on his chest. Naruto, how is your injury? He felt at his chest, at the spot. It feels much better now. Thanks, Sakura-chan. She could only stare dumbly, as he rose to his knees pressing the ripped spot in his shirt without even a grimace. Has he always healed that fast? She thought back to many of their missions in the Forest of Death. His cuts never did seem to last, and injuries that would put anyone else out for the count he seemed to be able to shrug off. Come to think of it, he doesn't even have any of the cuts or bruises from his fights with Neji and Gaara. She furrowed her brow. Perhaps he had some kind of healing bloodline he wasn't even aware of. Shrugging it off, she tried to stand. The rain continued to pour, soaking both of them. We need to get out of this rain, Naruto. He nodded, and rose to his feet. She tried following, doubling over at the pain in her chest. He reached a hand out, gently helping her up. Your chest still hurts. Let me help Sakura-chan. She was too weak to protest, groaning as he helped her to her feet and she leaned on his shoulder. Her stomach grumbled loudly, reminding her that neither of them had eaten since possibly breakfast the day before. Stumbling to the trunk of a nearby large tree, the teammates laid back against the surface. It was then Sakura saw him in a flash of lightning. Gone was the goofy shit-eating grin and obnoxious kid. His face was sullen and serious, and the normal sparkle in his eyes retreated in the darkness. Another thunderclap rang throughout the forest, and the rain picked up, falling in greater volumes. Naruto, we should go back to the village, and see what we can find. He nodded slowly. What Sasuke-kun said to Naruto, maybe not all of it is destroyed. Tears threatened to fall at the thought of her home devastated. Thoughts of her raven-haired crush with the vile marks covering his face appeared in her mind, and she gritted her teeth, pushing the Uchiha out of her mind. Now's not the time to think of him. Her companion nodded slowly in reply. His ripped black shirt soaked from the rain and he shivered involuntarily at a gust of wind. Feeling guilty she had commandeered his jacket, she started to hand it back to him, shivering herself at the poor weather conditions. No, Sakura-chan, you can use it. She grumbled. He's always so nice to me. Sighing, she threw one sleeve around him and pulled the thick material over both of them. Fine, we share it. In truth, she felt numb inside. She would normally be in tears at the situation of being stranded in the woods without her home and Sasuke leaving. The solid presence of Naruto next to her kept her rooted to the earth. I have to be strong for him. He won't know what to do on his own. Let's go now, Naruto. We need to find someone or supplies or something. The two friends stumbled through the forest, leaning on each other under Naruto's signature jacket. They shivered despite their collective warmth, the heavy rain soaking their torn clothes. We have to get something dry, or we'll get hypothermia at this rate. The further through the forest they walked, the weaker Sakura began to feel. The cold, her wound, and the lack of food sapped at her strength. She coughed miserably, as they reached the end of the forest. Sakura-chan, are you okay? No, I'm not, Naruto. She nodded weakly, shrinking under his concerned gaze. She inwardly smiled when he didn't buy it, stopping and leaning back against a tree. Here, 1 second, she squeaked when he hoisted her in the air, laying the jacket over her. Nah, Naruto, she stuttered out, pressed against his chest. He quickened his pace toward the town, carrying her tight against him. How does he have so much energy? He was hurt more than me. It's okay, I'll get us to town. You can hit me for this later. The words stung. Did he really think she'd hit him for looking out for her? A random memory popped of him confronting her toward the end of the month after the preliminary. He had approached her but hadn't asked for anything in particular, mumbling and pressing his fingers together in a Hinata-ish manner. She had turned to leave when he grabbed her shoulder, and she spun and socked him in the face. Worse, this was only one of several similar memories. I always have been pretty violent toward him, she thought with a frown. Thanks, Naruto. She ended her protests and nestled her head against his chest. I'll not hit him so much anymore after this. She closed her eyes and pulled the jacket tighter in her arms, resting at the slight jostles of his quickened pace. She felt herself dozing on and off at the rhythmic motion, until Naruto stopped completely. Opening her eyes, she looked ahead of them and gasped. Oh God, it's terrible. Mountains of rubble lay ahead, piles of debris stacked haphazardly as far as she could see. The face of the Hokage mountain was shattered, only odd pieces of the faces once carved on the surface still attached to the cliff. Giant boulders lay at the bottom of the cliff, and only a few scattered buildings remained standing, though pieces of walls were missing. The ground was muddy and burned, scorch marks and ditches where roads once were. Naruto tightened his grip around her. His voice came out in choked sobs. It's G gone. K Konoha is gone. She put her hand on his and squeezed lightly, tears stinging her eyes lost in the wetness from underneath the pouring rain. Her voice wavered between her sobs and shivers, and she felt sick to her stomach and focused on looking at his face. Na Naruto, let Tzel look for someone or something. Naruto slowly walked into the ruins at her request, his legs moving mechanically as his eyes took in the horrific sight of the home he loved in such a condition. His eyes passed over the sides of the street they were on and he grimaced, clenching his eyes shut. Saw Sakura-chan, don't look. She nodded dumbly, not wanting to know what he had seen. He moved faster, stepping over broken walls and shattered stones and bricks. She shivered again, pulling the soaked jacket against her chest. We need something dry and food. Finally she tugged at his shirt, and he stopped looking at her questioningly. Let me down, Naruto, we have to find supplies. He slowly set her down and she stumbled, leaning against him until she gained her balance, feeling dizzy. She looked about, taking in the broken buildings. It took her a few minutes to realize that they were on a market street only a block away from her own home. I have some soldier pills in my house, maybe they are still there. Naruto, this way, I live up ahead. She pointed, and started to stumble over the rocks through the mud, dragging the blonde along to balance on. Her heart leapt with slight relief when she saw a portion of her house was still standing. But nothing could prepare her for what she saw where her doorstep would have been. Two bodies lay strewn, half buried under the rubble, a middle-aged man and woman, which she could instantly identify by the strands of pink hair sticking out of the mud. My parents. Her insides turned to ice, and her stomach heaved, attempting to vomit its empty contents. Sakura-chan. Naruto was instantly behind her, stroking her hair in a comforting gesture, before pulling her into a tight hug. She coughed, and heaved a few more times and bawled into his shirt. Those are my parents. She tightened her arms around him, sobbing madly into his shirt. She didn't look at his face, remained in his embrace until her final sobs racked out of her. Her world was shattered. Naruto was really all she had left now. She finally looked to see his troubled face. His eyes were dull and filled with pain. She had only seen brief glimpses in his eyes before, but never paid much heed to. She briefly wondered if her own eyes were so limpid. I have to be strong with him. Her body and heart groaned in protest. As she pushed off of him with another sob, she proceeded unsteadily toward the wall, still standing, Naruto close behind her. Grabbing a kunai out of her pack, she used it as an improvised spade to dig at a pile of dirt where a cabinet should have been. Some fortune finally on this dreary day, when Sakura found a small emergency case she knew contained a few soldier pills and some medical supplies. Her trembling hands carefully opened the case, and popped out a soldier pill. She bit into it eagerly and handed another to her friend. Eat it. He nodded and complied. Sakura took a deep breath, feeling strength enter her exhausted body. Using the boost of energy, she started digging where her closet would be. Naruto moved behind her quietly and assisted in relocating the rubble. Soon enough, the two had uncovered several usable blankets and a change of clothes for Sakura. She tossed a blanket to Naruto, and pulled another around herself, stuffing the rest of the bounty in a sheet as a sack. When she was satisfied with what she could find in the ruins of her house, she looked around, glancing back to where she saw her parents. She gasped and tears spilled down her cheeks as she saw a half-dozen Naruto clones had stacked the rubble into a tomb for her family. He was burying them this whole time. She catapulted into his chest and cried again, choking out a, "Thank you." He remained silent, and hugged her protectively. Finally breaking apart, Naruto's haggard voice broke over the rain, his hands tangled in her damp and messy hair. Sakura-chan, let's try to find Kakashi-sensei. She nodded and spared one last glance to her ruined house before they departed. Eventually the two found themselves wandering toward the Colosseum. Wherever they looked, a corpse, more often than not a citizen and ninja of Konoha, lay discarded in the mud and rain. The stadium loomed ahead, most of its walls intact. They glanced at each other, and started up the stairs to the upper section. Many of the bleachers were still full of people who had fallen asleep in the genjutsu. They'd never wake again, she realized and swallowed a lump in her throat. Oh God, Ino and our friends were in the stands further up. They hurried, heading up the section to where she had been seated the day before. Sakura released a relieved sigh when she saw who wasn't present. Sakura-chan, it looks like Kakashi-sensei must have gotten most the people here out. But, where do we go now? She thought for a moment. There didn't appear to be any life left in the ruined village. The absence of their friends at the stadium suggested they either escaped the battle or died elsewhere. She prayed it was the former. A clatter rang from the stands away, and a hand clamped under her mouth. Sakura looked at her friend with panicked eyes, who shoved her behind a section of broken walls and seats hovering over her. Shish, some guys are coming, and I don't think they are from Konoha. Fear tore at her heart, and she nodded slowly, trembling underneath her friend, while mashed against the wall. There's no way we can fight in our condition. A distant voice grumbled, in a ridiculing tone. A brief laugh answered. Her heart pounded against her ribcage, as long minutes passed. When it finally went quiet, Naruto finally pulled her up. He whispered gruffly, "They're gone now. I don't think it's safe to stay here." A dizzy spell seized her, and she wavered on her feet, the cold and dampness chipping at her health. She leaned against him, and nodded, coughing lightly. She felt as if she was about to faint. Naruto, I don't feel so well." She looked up in her eyes, seeing the deep ocean blue of his eyes full of worry and slumped against his chest, and the world went black. Naruto quickly caught her, panic rising in him. The blonde knew little of being sick in medicine, and was aware that something was ailing his pink-haired crush. "I have to get her somewhere warm. Please hang in there, Sakura-chan." Holding her tight against his chest, he piled all the blankets on top of her, to shield her from the relentless rain and hold what little warmth she had in. She lay limp in his arms, the only movement was her ragged breathing. Seeing the gaping hole in the wall Guy had made, he jumped out. He knew there was a small village about 8 miles from Konoha somewhere in that direction. "Don't worry, Sakura-chan, I'll get you help." Landing on the ground, his knees nearly buckled and he grimaced in pain. His muscles ached, but he would not stop now. Naruto began to run as fast as he could, carrying the feverish girl. He nearly stumbled many times, sliding on the slick mud and dirt. He quietly thanked Ero Sennin's training on water walking, finding his body's automatic reflexes improved while crossing muddy, slick surfaces. Reaching a road, he found traveling easier. Still, his muscles burned throughout his body, and his lungs began to sear in his chest. Finally his legs failed him and he nearly doubled over as he began to cough violently. "I will save her." His dogged determination won, and he sucked in a few deep breaths before hurrying onward once again. The dark sky was still shrouded by clouds, and he only knew the way by the occasional flash of lightning and the texture of the road beneath his feet. It's gotta be somewhere ahead. He stole brief glances down past her dirty pink hair and feverish face, seeing that her breathing was shallower than before. "Please hang on." Finally, the dim glow of distant lights answered his prayers. With his goal in sight, he surged forward before his body would fail. His legs burned with every step, and his arms threatened to drop his precious cargo. Stumbling into the deserted streets, the rain finally began to let up, as if playing a cruel joke. Entering the streets, he saw the sign of a small inn, and burst into the door, panting. An elderly man gaped at the sight of him. Naruto choked out, his vision darkening. "Please, help her." Fatigue claimed him, causing him to collapse to the ground, his arms splayed in front of him, still bearing the unconscious and ailing Sakura. It was as if the sky itself cried, reflecting his inner grief. Lightning and thunder mirrored his louder howls and wails. Naruto tightly clutched the bundle to his chest, running toward the lights on the horizon. But with every step, the distance did not reduce. Please hang on, Sakura. Just a bit further, I promise. His legs finally gave way and he slipped, crashing face first into the wet muddy ground, the girl in his arm going airbound in front of him. He frantically tried to rise to his feet, repeatedly falling in the deep mud. Sakura lay sprawled in front of him in an unnatural position. Must hurry. Scrambling over her, he brushed her matted pink locks out of her face, and raised his hand to her forehead. Cold. She's as cold as ice. Tears stung his eyes, as he put his head toward her bosom which lay eerily still. She's not breathing. I failed. Oh God, no heartbeat. He began to shake her gently. Sakura, please wake up. Sakura-chan. He stared at her limp form, bereft of life. He shivered. He was alone, cold, and wet. His body burned with fatigue, and he stood up slowly. How could I let this happen? I should have been stronger. He looked to the skyward and howled. He continued to howl, a bestial, piercing cry of anguish, echoing across the fields and forests. Taking a breath, he continued to stare at the darkened sky. The flashes of lightning highlighted his grim features, as he remained, uncaring of the unrelenting rain soaking him to the marrow. Sakura is gone. Why? I've lost everything. There's nothing left. He keeled over in the mud over her still form, and darkness took him. A hacking cough ripped out of him, and he bolted upright. He was warm and dry. A small fire blazed in a brick hearth on one wall. He glimpsed the cloudy night sky from the closed window. His eyes adjusted slowly to the light, and he rubbed at them fiercely. I'm in a bed. His tattered and filthy clothes were gone, and he reluctantly pushed away the warm comforter and stood up in his boxers. His eyes widened and his back stiffened as his feet touched the floor by the bed. Oh God, Sakura-chan. I failed her. Panic and grief swelled in his very soul. He threw his head back, and was about to cry out again in anguish. Then he heard a small hiccup behind him, and wheeled around. He noticed another small trundle bed a foot and a half apart from the one he awoke on. A large pile of mismatched blankets and sheets laid stacked on top a raised area in the middle. Pink strands of hair were draped down the side of a pillow. Sakura-chan. He leapt over his bed, tripping himself, falling between the two mattresses in a thump. Naruto scampered to his feet and inspected the girl. She was tucked in tightly with many extra blankets. Her face looked sweaty and feverish, but more importantly, she was breathing. She was alive. A dream, it was a nightmare. He shivered. It had felt so eerily real. He gently brushed his fingers over her forehead. Warm. This is real. He sat down slowly, the events of yesterday replaying in his mind, remembering reaching the village and all the horrors he had seen yesterday. My home. Sakura-chan's house, her parents. The village, our friends. Tears spilled unbidden down his face. Many images flashed in his mind. Memories of the broken bodies lying strewn about in the mud. Some pierced or hacked to pieces, others charred or bloated. He felt sick to his stomach, and lay back perpendicular to the direction his bed faced, his legs dangling over the side as the tears flowed unbidden down his face. Why did everyone have to die? It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. To his torment, he remembered the many cheers he had procured from the citizens of the town, the acknowledgement that he was indeed a strong shinobi upon besting Neji in combat. People had finally acknowledged me for who I am. But for what? Now likely all those he sought recognition from were ironically slain the same day. An hour of half-suppressed sobs later, he slapped at his face. But Sakura-chan is alive. I have to protect her now. He wiped the tears off of his strained and puffy eyes, and looked to the slumbering girl. Her words from the night after he fought with Gaara echoed in his mind. You're all I have left now. He tightened his fist. I will be there for Sakura-chan, for the rest of my life. And I do not go back on my word, that is my nindo. He hoarsely whispered over her. You're all I have left, too, Sakura-chan. I promise I'll be there for you forever. I won't leave you alone. For a brief moment, he thought he imagined her lips curl up into a comforted smile. With his legendary resolve gathered and decided, Naruto looked about the room once more. His wet and ripped clothes lay on the ground in an unkempt pile. It wouldn't be comfortable to put them on without washing and drying them first, and they'd need serious repairs in several places, such as where Sakura had cut at his shirt away and the many rips from the battles. Frowning, he leant down and fished out the weight in one of his pant pockets. It was his bulging wallet. Gamma-chan. I have to thank the man for saving Sakura-chan. As if answering his thoughts, the door swung open with an audible creak. The elderly man he had only vaguely remembered came in bearing a bundle of clothing. You're awake and about. You heal fast. You're from Konoha, aren't you? The man nodded toward the forehead protector on the nightstand. Tell me, what happened that two young ninjas came in a storm like that in the middle of the night? Tears started to form again, and he cleared his voice with a cough. Looking over to his teammate, he turned back to the man. K Konoha is G gone, it was destroyed yesterday. We escaped. The man looked stricken. Any inhabitant of the nearby villages would be. The Leaf Village was a pillar of strength and kept the Fire Country safe and in economic prosperity. His face softened, and he looked again to the young blonde. Take care of your friend, she needs a lot of rest right now. You were lucky you got here when you did, she would have died from hypothermia or exhaustion if you got here much slower. The room and these clothes are on the house. Naruto looked to the man who set the bundle down, and quietly retreated to the door. Leaving the young shinobi alone once again. Naruto mouthed his thanks, despite the kindly old man's absence. Thank you. He looked to the tall flames of the fire. He found the way the flames leapt and flickered soothing, and let his mind wander. His ears focused on the infrequent crackles and sound of slow burning. The room was quiet once again. Save for Sakura's labored breathing. He lay back on his bed and pulled the comforter up to his chin, and looked again at her now calm face. He was a fount of near-endless stamina and chakra, and his wounds healed at an unrivaled rate. However, the events of yesterday still left him bone-weary. Sakura-chan is safe for now, and with that comforting thought, he let himself drift into a long fitful sleep. Sakura stirred underneath the pile of blankets, and opened her tired eyes slowly. Where am I? A room. Naruto. She coughed fitfully, and started to sit up. She spotted the blonde sleeping peacefully for the time being on a nearby bed, occasionally letting out a soft snore. He saved me again. A fond smile formed on her face seeing his shaggy blonde hair. My family, our home. The girl felt empty inside, her heart frantically tried to deny what she had seen. Before she could stop herself, she was crying into her pillow, whimpering at the memories for uncounted. Sakura-chan, you're awake, how are you feeling? She wiped her eyes between sobs, and turned to the voice. There Naruto stood, clad only in his boxers, gazing at her with concern and relief. His golden yellow hair was wild and disheveled, unrestrained by his usual forehead protector. His eyes were puffy, the sapphire orbs were dimmer than usual, but a shining glimmer of resolve flickered in his gaze. I'm okay Naruto, just a bit dizzy. Thank you. What happened? Her voice cracked with the last of her sobs. The last thing she could recall with clarity was the palpable terror in hiding from a patrol of sound ninja, jammed uncomfortable against a broken wall underneath her companion. Now she was in a warm bed, dry in a room with a small fire flickering and casting a soft glow across the cozy room. You passed out. I was so scared, Sakura-chan. I ran all the way here. We're in that small village near Konoha with all the lodges. Her eyes widened. How could he have run those 8 or so miles, carrying me already exhausted and hurt? Just how much vitality does he have? Her thoughts were interrupted as his lanky arms snaked around her back and started squeezing her with the bed sheet between them. I'm so glad you're okay. I normally would have hit him for this, wouldn't I? But now, his embrace was only warm and comforting, and she didn't complain when he failed to let go for several minutes. When he slowly released her, she looked up at the sheepish grin he wore. At least he's still Naruto. She was about to give him a small smile. He was always there for her, even when she didn't want him to be. I have to stay busy, and think of the future. He needs me now. Then she began to think. Naruto, what will we do? We don't have any money or place to go. His eyebrow quirked up. Here Sakura-chan, take my Gamma-chan. I've been saving since I became a genin and I had it in my pocket. It should be enough to last us a few days at least. He tossed what she thought was the goofiest green glob with bulgy frog eyes to her. She was surprised at its weight and bulge, and slowly emptied its contents on the bed. Mentally counting the money, she thought about the cost of things and looked at Naruto in shock. She let loose a barrage of questions to her friend. You carry this much money around. How much did you have at your home? But, it's a good thing, there's enough here to last us for a few weeks if we use cheap hotels. That's all the money I have. Just what I earned from our missions that I managed to save. He frowned at that while rubbing the back of his head. Is that bad? Sakura acquired a sudden appreciation that he had tried to ask her on so many dates before. Willing to spend his little wealth to be with her. He would have had to live frugally to only have this much after all those missions. She found herself contemplating back on what life must have been like as an orphan. He was always up to pranks, anything to get attention. I think I finally understand that pain of loneliness Sasuke mentioned. I was such a fool to take everything for granted. His concerned voice derailed her thoughts. Sakura-chan, are you okay? Sorry Naruto, just thinking. She thought for a second. There's no way I'm carrying around a frog wallet, ew. She pulled a small portion out of his wallet before tossing it back. It's your wallet, you hold most of it. She reached under her blanket to put the share she set aside for herself in a pocket. Sakura quickly discovered she wore naught but her undergarments. Pulling the comforter tighter up to her shoulders with a blush, she scanned the room for her clothes. She spotted the change of clothes hangings she had salvaged from her home on a hook by the door. Her previous garments, while in better condition than Naruto's, were still in no condition to use. With her cheeks heating up at the realization that both of them were half naked, she pointed toward the clean clothes on the wall. Naruto, can you toss me those please? I'm going to get dressed. And if you pickle, she let the threat hang in the air and he audibly gulped, tossing her the red dress and black shorts before moving to the window and staring outside. Sakura scrambled out of bed and quickly got dressed, before tucking the money in a pocket in her shorts. More or less taking leadership of the blonde who didn't seem to mind, she threw the change of a plain-looking clothes the man had brought in earlier at him. Okay, now we need to figure out where we're going to go. And get dressed. We should go find something to eat. The clothing whopped him in the back of the head, and he grumbled picking it up. She couldn't help but giggle slightly. I can do this. I just need to keep thinking of the future. There will be time to cry later. Soon the pair of surviving Konoha ninjas were dressed and ready, tucking their belongings into many pockets. When she noticed Naruto reaching for his forehead protector, she grabbed his hand. I don't think we should wear them for now. He looked at her confused with a question on his lips. I mean, we should lay low for now. What if there are enemies looking for leaf symbols around? Naruto wore a small frown, but nodded slowly in understanding, shoving his protector into his kunai pouch. Standing straight, he stretched out in a small yawn. Where are we going, Sakura-chan? Are you feeling okay enough to leave? Naruto inquired, slinging the innovated sack from one of Sakura's sheets with the blankets they had gathered the night before. She thought for a moment. Yay, I just need to take it easy. Let's get further away from Konoha for now. If anyone escaped, they probably wouldn't be this near the village, and probably toward the border of the country. Her stomach grumbled. Soldier pills were great for the field, but they consumed one while wounded, sick and tired, much of the nutrients were already expended. Giving him shy smile, she added, but first how about we find some real food? Naruto nodded in agreement, and walked toward the door when a slight rap could rang on the wood. They exchanged glances, and a small shrug, and Naruto stepped forward and opened the door. From her vantage point, which lay on the side the door opened to, she could only see him tense and stare, his head slightly inclined upward. Sakura felt troubled and perplexed at his silence and stillness. "Who is it, Naruto?" she questioned, walking across the room to where she could see. Two men loomed over Naruto. They wore long, flowing black cloaks spotted with small red designs that resembled a cloud shape. She traced her eyes upward to the taller of the two men, and held in a gasp, seeing that the skin on his face was light bluish gray. "Are those gills?" He had sharp, fine dark blue hair pointing upward and forward, and on his back an object wrapped in bandages in the shape of a sword rivaling the size of Zabuza's. She couldn't quite put her finger on how this man had come to look like that, but she firmly thought of how he reminded her of a shark. His eyes darted over the both of them, and he licked at his lips, as a predator, lurking for and eyeing its prey. Sakura then directed her eyes toward the shorter of the two visitors. He had raven black hair, falling to the sides of his face and pronounced cheekbones. Then she saw his eyes, letting a silent gasp. Her insides turned to ice upon seeing those cold eyes. Blood-red irises, with a black wheel pattern, radiated danger directed toward her blonde companion. Her mind raced on who this man must be. The Sharingan. He looks like Sasuke. Her eyes widened at the realization. The one man he said he'd kill, his brother. Finally she noted the long horizontal scratch across his Konoha forehead protector, confirming his status as a nuke nin, and it was too late to escape. To think that this little boy has the 9 tails within him. The shark-faced man muttered under his breath to his shorter companion, and Naruto stiffened at the words. 9 tails? What does he mean? Naruto-kun, you're coming with us. The man, she concluded, must be an Uchiha, glowered and spoke, pointing his lacquered nails toward the blonde in front of her. Why are they after Naruto? We can't fight these guys, they're going to kill us. Naruto, run! She screamed frantically, and was too slow to dodge the swift kick delivered to her stomach by the shark man. She doubled over in pain, gasping for breath. She coughed as she tumbled into the side of the bed. Sakura tried vainly to push herself up with her trembling arms, but only to crash weakly back to the ground, sputtering. Run, Naruto, get away. Wheezing, with the wind knocked out of her, Sakura continued to try to push herself up. The mocking tone of the taller assailant grated her ears, and she tilted her head to watch forward. He had pulled off the long, tightly wrapped weapon off his back, turning to his companion, as he grumbled, "Oi, Itachi, should I shave his legs of mph?" Her eyes widened at the sight. It was as if something inside Naruto snapped. One moment he was frozen, staring them down, the next his foot had rocketed forth into the groin area of Shark Man with a blinding speed. A guttural growl emitted from his throat, and a dense fiery chakra surrounded his being. Don't you ever lay a finger on Sakura-chan, or I'll kill you. This is like in the forest when he fought Orochimaru. The blue-faced man groaned, while in the bent position, his face twisted in pain. Straightening slowly, he roared while swinging his weapon toward Naruto, "You little brat." The blonde twisted and leapt to the side, sticking to the side of the wall before launching himself forward, thrusting his fist forward. His attacks were blocked, but the force of his leap had pushed the attacker back into the hall. She got a closer glimpse of her blonde friend's eyes, mentally gasping at the sight of the color. His normal sapphire blue that reflected hope, resolve, and mischievousness was now a deep blood ruby red filled with wrathful anger. Naruto's gone berserk. He'll be killed if he doesn't run. She tried to scream at him to just run, but her voice wouldn't come. Sakura managed to rise on all fours, slowly using the bed to push off of and rise to her feet. Her legs wobbled in her weakness, having not fully recovered and bearing the pain of the powerful kick. She watched as the giant sword-like object thrust toward and slashed at the berserk Naruto, who deftly rolled and growled and jumped into swift counterattacks. Despite his effort, he never managed to break past the blue man's guard. Naruto began to pant, his reactions growing slower. The aura of red chakra enveloping him seemed smaller. His chakra is being drained or he's tired. Both possibilities she supposed were possible, and both would prove fatal in a short span of time. I have to help him, or they'll kill him. She heaved another deep breath, and started stumbling forward. I'm going to kill you, you little bastard. Naruto's opponent roared, the bandage near the end of his sword unraveling, revealing what resembled to be a field of small spikes along the blade. He began a low arcing swing toward a midair Naruto much faster than the others. She clenched her eyes tightly. There's no way he can dodge that. There was no sound of any impact, and she opened her eyes. The one called Itachi had stopped the swing with his hand on his forearm, while Naruto had jumped back closer to her, breathing heavily. You're taking too long, Kisame. He could become too much of a hassle if he uses more of his power. I'll take care of him. He must be the stronger one, and he has the Sharingan. I have to do something. But what can I do? The Uchiha's eyes started to change, and she instinctively bolted forward with a surge of adrenaline, knocking Naruto to the side. She observed the brow of the Uchiha furrow in an unexpected disappointment as she locked eyes with the opponent. Her world spun, color drained from her sight in a surreal setting. She stood alone facing the black silhouette of the Uchiha, colorless save those vile blood red of his eyes. She looked around fearfully. Naruto, where's Naruto? Where am I? Suddenly she was bound to a stake, and began to panic as she stared at the dark man. You'll regret taking my technique for him. This is a world where you will suffer for 3 days. Can you bear the pain? He thrust a short knife into her right shoulder. Screaming, she tried to thrash away vainly against her bonds. A genjutsu? This can't be real. But God, it hurts. Her cruel tormentor materialized another sword, stabbing it into her left shoulder. Another scream racked out of her, and she almost passed out from the pain. Naruto, I have to be strong for Naruto. Swallowing the pain fitfully, she took a deep breath before the next blade pierced her. A screaming cry came from the back of her mind, and echoed at her attacker. Shanaru. Continually, the stabs came, the Uchiha stabbing and taunting at her with a malice she had never conceived before. However, unlike the first two, with each thrust of a blade she'd only feel a dull sensation instead of the piercing heart-wrenching pain, and inner Sakura's anger would grow. Many times she growled out, cursing at her torturer who regarded her with an impassive annoyance. What seemed an eternity later, her body ached, her shoulders faltered, the nerves aflame with pain as she crashed back into the world of light, slumping toward the ground to be caught by Naruto. Sakura-chan, are you okay? She shivered, looking into his blue again eyes. Her nerves were shot, she was beyond exhausted, and her entire being was numb except for the burning sensation of her shoulders. Itachi pointed forward toward the pair, opening his Sharingan eyes once again. That girl, she has some kind of special resistance to my technique. Let's take both. She was dimly aware of Naruto setting her down gently on her knees, before performing his signature jutsu and dashing toward the pair with another growl. The one referred to as Kisame slashed his bizarre sword toward several of the Bunshin, causing them to dispel. He's still fighting to protect me. He always saves me. Am I just a burden? Biting her lip till a trickle of blood leaked, she stumbled to her feet. Her mind spun, inner Sakura leaking out from the compressed anger from the torture surging forth as she staggered forward, whipping out a kunai. The shark man slammed the real Naruto into the wall and he groaned and began sliding down the surface after the crashing impact. Sakura stabbed at the Uchiha who caught her wrist and twisted it upward. A sickening crack resounded as she screamed from the pain. She was quickly swept off her feet by a quick kick to her shin and she felt a snap, falling on the ground writhing. The intense pain clouded her mind and she closed her eyes, the exhaustion and pain darkening her world. Naruto groaned, pushing himself off the ground at the sound of the loud crack, then the second snap. The high-pitched scream grated his ears, and he stumbled to his feet. Sakura-chan. She rolled to her side before lying still. Before he could react, The shark face was over him with a downward swing. We really are going to die. He raises his hands in a futile attempt to block the blow, which never came. A puff of smoke and he opened his eyes. A large frog with gleaming silvery mail and thick metallic wrist guards had blocked the blow, squaring off against the attacker. Naruto whipped his head behind him, and nearly cried seeing the tall white-haired man, a fierce look in his eye. His red and gray mail billowing from a quick arrival, and his hands still pressed into the summoning seal. Ero Sennin is here. Someone troublesome has arrived. Kisame growled, attempting to overpower the armored frog, who redirected the bandaged blade to the side. Jiraiya stood tall, an angry glint in his eye seeing the condition of the two Konoha shinobi battered by the nuke nin. Itachi wasted no time against the new arrival, and summoned a pair of cage bunshin, which dashed toward him and the downed Naruto. Grappling with one, his eyes widened realizing the strategy of the Uchiha. His hair quickly formed around him in an impenetrable shield of bristles, absorbing most of the blow as the clone exploded in a raging fire of force, sending the frog Sannin backward. His spiky hair retracted to its normal form, as he quickly prepared a concentrated ball of swirling sky blue chakra in his hand, thrusting it into the second clone before it could reach Naruto. His deep voice boomed out, as he went through a flurry of seals slamming his hands into the ground with another summon. Naruto, grab Sakura and stay back. Complying with his estranged sensei's command, he scooped up the unconscious girl quickly and jumped backward behind the man. The corridor erupted with smoke as the environment changed, wooden halls turned into a pulsing mass of pink and red slimy surface. Tendrils grasped at attacking the enemy nin. Kisame, we are pulling out. Itachi grunted out, as the two dashed off. Jiraiya focused his will on attempting to trap them as they turned the corner, the living walls snapping at them with a vicious fast-working acid burning at the hems of their robes. Then the halls went silent. Jiraiya sprinted with a speed that belied his age to follow the corner they turned and gaped as he looked forward at the gaping hole in the wall ahead, a flame black as night flickered around the breach. Naruto held the unconscious Sakura to his chest tightly. I'm weak, how could I let this happen? He looked over her form. Her only obvious wounds were her right wrist and shin, which even he could clearly tell were broken roughly. Gently squeezing her, he pressed his face into her pink hair crying softly. Things keep getting worse. The fleshy walls dissipated around the ground, and the shadow of the tall Sannin stood over him. Naruto, I'm sorry I was late. The mess of Konoha. I tried to find you. I'll have a look at her. He watched on eagerly as the legendary ninja carefully examined his precious friend. This is bad, I can set the bones, but she won't be able to walk or use her hand much until an expert looks at her. He stiffened at the words. Why couldn't I be the one hurt? Naruto, we are going to go find someone who can heal Sakura, so relax, okay? He looked at his sensei with questioning eyes. You know someone who can help Sakura-chan? The sagely man nodded. Yes, but she can be difficult to find and it may be a while. Come. Let's get her set right away. After Jiraiya tended to the pink-haired girl who rested again on a bed, he turned back to the anxious Naruto. Ero Sennin. Just who is Orochimaru? Sasuke. He spit out the name bitterly, said he destroyed Konoha and he went to join him. And who were those guys and how did they know of the Kyuubi? Jiraiya sighed at his dubbed nickname before answering. He was once my teammate. But his desire for power pushed him down the dark road, and he betrayed Konoha many years ago. I conceived that I'd fight against him someday, but I never would have imagined he'd actually be able to destroy the village. His tone was distant and as he looked straight ahead. Turning back to his student, he set his large hand on the boy's shoulder. Naruto, that was Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke's brother, and Hoshigaki Kisame. They are members of a dangerous organization called Akatsuki composed of S-class nuke nins. They are not after you, they are after what's inside of you. I knew they'd be after you, but not that they would find you so soon. They were on their way to search Konoha for you, goaded a witness of your finding this place through a genjutsu. I found the panicked man in the street and learned where you were. Naruto gripped at his stomach and stared ahead, lost in thought. Sakura-chan was hurt because they were after what's inside me. The tall man sighed and knelt down. Naruto, perhaps you should tell her now. I know you don't talk about it much with anyone. You can't do this alone anymore. He nodded slowly and sighed, in quiet contemplation for a few moments before speaking again. Aro-sennin, do you know if anyone escaped from Konoha? Sakura-chan and I couldn't find Kakashi-sensei or our other friends at the stadium. Jiraiya's eyes widened, then smiled slowly. You couldn't find Kakashi? That's good news. If he escaped, he'd likely have saved many and they're probably out hiding somewhere. You can count on him. But Naruto, the leaf is broken. Until someone who's inherited the will of fire rises up and can challenge the world, the people from Konoha will remain scattered and hidden. The blonde tightened his fist. The will of fire, like the Hokage. My dream, he muttered, looking toward his sleeping teammate. I couldn't even protect Sakura-chan. The older man bonked him on the head. Then get stronger. Become someone who can. I think you have the will of fire, Naruto, but are you big enough to grow into it? It's a long road, and there are no shortcuts. I know that. It's just Konoha and Sakura-chan. I don't want to fail. Naruto groaned. Jiraiya harumphed and grumbled. I'm disappointed in you. That sounds like something an Uchiha would say. I thought you had the guts. Never give up. Naruto growled and stood up. I never give up, and I don't go back on my word. That's my nindo. Now that's more like it. I'll help you on that road, Naruto. I'll teach you a technique that the Yondaime Hokage created. It's a loud popping followed by a cheer woke Sakura with a start. Opening her eyes slowly, daylight poured into the open window on the wall. A comforting fresh breeze filled the air. Her wrist throbbed in pain, and she looked toward the source of the sound. Naruto stood toward one side of the room with a popped balloon in his hand. She raised her hands to rub at her eyes, wondering if she was seeing things, and winced in pain upon moving her right hand. She took an easy breath. She felt considerably better now, despite the pain in her wrist. Glancing at it, she continued to rub the sleep out of her eyes with the left examining the tightly wrapped cast on her right arm. What happened? Oh, the fight. We survived. What on earth is Naruto doing with a balloon? Naruto. The startled blonde turned quickly and cheered. Sakura-chan. She looked around the room. It was a large room, with 2 sleeping mats laid out on the ground, and she appeared to be in the only actual bed. Questions raced through her mind and she quickly barraged them at the blonde. What happened? Where are we? Is that a balloon? Why are there 2 mats? Where are? Wait. One at a time, Sakura-chan. He moved up and sat on the side of her bed. Aro-sennin saved us, and those guys retreated. We're in a village nearer to the border of fire country. You've been asleep for a few days now. I was so worried. This balloon is part of my new training. She raised her eyebrow. His answers were only raising more questions. Wait, Naruto, who on earth is Aro-sennin? And what training? A headache was rapidly forming at the onslaught of information. Oh, I forgot you haven't met Aro-sennin yet. Though that's probably a good thing, he mumbled under his breath. He became my sensei when I was training for the finals. The balloon is teaching me a powerful new jutsu that will beat even Sasuke's Chidori. This, Aro-sennin, is teaching him a stronger technique than Chidori. Who the heck could he be? Her brow furrowed in frustration. Naruto was not helping. Well, then where are we going, Naruto? I'm so lost here, she whined to the blonde. He scratched the back of his head. To get you fixed, Sakura-chan. Aro-sennin knows some great medical ninja, but she's hard to find. He's out gathering information right now. He grumbled, spitting the word information out with contempt. Lying back, the pink-haired girl began to attempt to make sense from his many answers. The pulsing in her wrist had her remembering the battle with the Dark Uchiha. I couldn't do anything. Naruto, why were they after you? What was that red chakra? It felt so unpleasant. The shark guy said something about the Kyuubi. He looked solemn and his eyes stared forward, with a distant look. His right hand gripped at his stomach and he spoke slowly. The Yondaime Hokage sealed the Kyuubi inside me when I was a baby. I spent most of my life alone seeking acknowledgement and being shunned for a reason I didn't know. It wasn't until the day I graduated that Mizuki broke the secret to me. He lifted his shirt and she raised an eyebrow, and then gasped lightly when a large black swirl started to appear on his bare stomach. She stared down, so many puzzle pieces clicking together in her mind. The reason he heals so fast, why those guys were after him, the red chakra, how he beat Gaara maybe. Why he was always alone. The whiskers. She looked at him slowly. He looked anxious and troubled, still staring ahead. I can't believe I used to think he had it good to not have parents to scold him. It's my turn to cheer you up. Setting her left hand on his, she squeezed lightly. I don't think the Yondaime could have chosen a better person to trust with that burden, Naruto. A tear slid down his cheek and he turned to face her. You really mean that? What about Sasuke? Huffing, she answered. Sasuke, he had to mention him. She paused for a second thinking of what to say. Being and fighting with Naruto since the exam had given her some perspective on the Uchiha. I don't even want to imagine how he'd have turned out if he had the world's most powerful demon inside him. I mean it, Naruto. His face lit up as if he received the world's greatest praise from her words. Thank you, Sakura-chan, that means so much to me. So those guys will be after Naruto. I'll try to be there for you as you were for me. Inner Sakura roared and punched with a Shanaru, echoing her thoughts. She nodded slowly, giving him a soft smile and a careful one-armed hug. A jolly, lecherous laugh ruined the moment. Oh ho ho. I wonder if I can trust leaving you two alone. Sakura released the blonde and blushed at the implications of the voice, turning to the large man in the door. A very tall, older man with long snow-white spiky hair in a special red robe of mail grinned at them in a perverted fashion. He had a horned protector on his head, with the word, oil, written on it, and two red markings down his cheeks. Something seemed familiar about him, but she couldn't put where she had seen his face. Naruto growled and made a decidedly rude gesture to the older man. Arrow Sennin. This is the Arrow Sennin. Then she suddenly remembered where she had seen him. She gasped, pointing. You're Jiraiya-sama, one of the legendary Sannin. He's been Naruto's sensei. She gave the blonde a confused stare and whispered to him. Naruto, how can you call him Arrow Sennin? He knelt over and whispered in her ear. She grumbled, and blushed further at what he said, but shrugged it off. He can't be that bad. He's one of the greatest ninjas of Konoha. Oh, at least someone knows how to show proper respect. I have a lead for who we are looking for, and it's nice to meet you, Sakura. We'll head out now if you two are done being all kissy-faced. She burned up. Okay, maybe he is a little bad. She'd soon learn that was just the tip of the iceberg. Naruto settled for shouting like a petulant child, beating her to the punch. Arrow Sennin, we were not kissy-faced. Sakura nodded quickly in agreement. You're sure, both turning red and denying it rather quick. Maybe I'd have had some real research if I came in a few minutes later. Not knowing quite what he was implying, she looked back to the noisy blonde next to her. What does he mean by research? Seeing the questioning look on her face, Naruto leant over and whispered in her ear. She stared at him, shrugged and replied, I don't understand. What do you mean? Naruto smiled sheepishly, scratching at the back of his head. You're pretty naive, Sakura-chan. She growled, and was about to hit him when the throb in her wrist discouraged her to think twice about that course of action. She sighed and attempted to give him the dirtiest look she could manage. That had the desired effect, she decided, seeing him pale visibly. I didn't mean it in a bad way. You just have to be careful of him or he'll research you too. Inner Sakura growled, Grr, I still don't understand. The frustrated girl was about to ask him to explain it another way when the amused Sanin spoke up. Sakura's too young and flat-chested for my tastes. The perverted dismissed in an offhand manner. Said girl stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. Did he just say? She carefully considered the words. Ero Sennin and research were starting to click together. Let me at him. Die pervert die. Shanaru. Her eyes narrowed on the older man. Inner Sakura had the right idea with the battle axe she was wildly swinging. Had it not been for the sharp pain above her right ankle when she tried to step down, Jiraiya may have learned a lesson to keep his comments away from Sakura. However, as her foot reached the floor she winced and collapsed to the floor. Sakura-chan, your shin is broken. Ero Sennin says you can't walk till we get it healed. Naruto gasped out, and gently pulled her back onto the bed, taking great care not to jostle her broken limbs. Releasing the sharp intake of breath from the pain, she turned and pouted at her friend with glistening eyes. I was only trying to kill him. Jiraiya muttered under his breath, she's like a mini version of her. Naruto has his work cut out for him, she counted to 10 slowly, and pushed back inner Sakura. What's that supposed to mean? This guy is really pushing all my buttons. Sanin or not, I'll kick his ass one day. Shanaru. While she attempted to glare at him to death, the Toad Sage continued, ignoring the burning eyes of the injured Kunoichi. Well, let's get moving, we can continue this later. And we're going to have to travel by the trees, the roads are not safe for us right now. Leaning on Naruto, she hopped to one foot awkwardly. I'll deal with him later, she frowned, beginning to think of the prospect of traveling in the forest while clinging to Naruto's shoulder. If I can't walk without assistance, won't going by tree be even more difficult? Jiraiya shook his head, and grinned at her. Just go by the way you got here. Have the brat carry you. He wouldn't trust me to do it for some reason. She squeaked as Naruto scooped her up automatically, as if he was used to this. The back of her mind said he was indeed doing this a lot recently. Her face burned up in embarrassment as she lay secure in his arms, her legs gently draped over his left arm, with her arms folded across her chest. Jiraiya continued gathering the other supplies throughout the room, storing them in many pockets and a large knapsack he carried. As touched as she was that Naruto had continued to save her life and acted as her personal transport, she still felt there was something degrading about this whole situation. This is humiliating. I'm a kunoichi. In response to her huff and pouting look, Naruto only looked down, giving her a reassuring, and quite genuine grin. She grumbled and settled against his chest. May as well get comfortable, at least it's Naruto and not that pervert. Naruto soon concluded that carrying Sakura was a mixed blessing. He could not deny that he liked way her slim, graceful body molded against his chest and arms. And her intoxicating, inescapable scent and the way her silky pink hair breezed in the wind, tickling at his neck. She'd scan the lush forest in a bored-like manner, occasionally giving him this cutest look, her lips turned into a slight pout and her forest emerald eyes, shimmering up at him briefly, before looking away. No, he quite liked that. And this was rapidly degenerating into a threat of sorts. He found it increasingly difficult to stay focused on his task of navigating the treetops while keeping up with their perverted guardian. Her distracting presence was hampering his accomplishing of this without smacking the both of them into a tree or similar blunder. Toting around an unconscious Sakura was quite easier, as she slept still and just fit nicely in his arms as if she was made to belong there. But no, now that she was awake, she'd fidget ever so slightly and give him that pout that made his stomach do flips. The Kyuubi vessel was becoming increasingly more nervous at this more intimate traveling method. His feelings for the pink-haired girl were no secret, and since that day everything changed, she wasn't pushing him away. And now, here Sakura lay nestled against his chest, her pink hair flaying in the wind and her head lying just below his right shoulder. He began to let his mind drift at the rhythmic pace as he leapt from branch to branch through the foliage. He reflexively tightened his guarded grip on the girl, when a sleek wooden limb he selected as a stepping stone cracked, causing him to bolt quickly to a sturdier footing. A mistake he quickly concluded, becoming conscious just where his hands were once again. One tightly slipped around her waist, the other cupped around her bare right thigh a bit below where her shorts covered. Her skin is so soft, he swallowed, and focused his eyes forward, praying the girl would not ask him why his face was heating up. He was on the receiving end of Sakura's fists many times in the past, and while she favored her right hook, he knew the left was nothing to sneeze at. Now the last thing he wanted was for her to assume he was having perverted thoughts and taking advantage of her injuries as an excuse to hold her. Naruto witnessed that dreadful glint in her eye when she threatened the elder super pervert after all. So when Ero Sennin stated that they'd take a break, and that he should get some headway into the second step of Rasengan training, he nearly felt like kissing the old man for quite possibly indirectly saving his life. Setting Sakura down gently against the trunk of a large tree, he grinned sheepishly and let out a relieved breath. She quirked an inquiring eyebrow toward him, but remained silent regarding him with cool green eyes. Shrinking from her gaze, he turned to his nearby sensei. Jiraiya tossed him a rubber ball, and sat down a bag filled with more, should he need, before disappearing into the forest under the pretense of scouting ahead. He began to observe his surroundings. The trees were thick and sturdy, with high branches and dense foliage, choking off the daylight in the cool forest shade. A few stray sunbeams dappled the wide grassy clearing, giving the locale a soothing tranquil light. Sakura lay back, breathing the cool air deeply, stretching out her shoulders. She began to straighten her rosy locks of hair, before looking toward the whiskered ninja. Naruto. What's that? A rubber ball. Turning to his inquisitive crush he nodded. Naruto forgot that Jiraiya had explained the technique and the training while she was out of commission. It's the next step to my training, I have to make it explode with my chakra. He grinned, placing it in his hand. How are you going to do that? She looked puzzled, leaning forward to get a better look. Like this, he exclaimed and beamed at her with confidence. Now I can impress Sakura-chan. Holding the ball forward, he took a deep breath and channeled his chakra within. Using his curious cat-inspired method, he began to hit the ball quickly from many angles with his other hand. Sakura stared at him at the now lumpy-looking ball confusion, and he tightly gripped the pulsing ball before it returned to normal. Groaning in embarrassment, he started to think over the problem. This is much harder than I thought. Sakura giggled at him, that isn't what I'd call exploding. She saw his crestfallen look and tried to cheer him up. It's okay Naruto, you'll get it. I'm sure it happens to a lot of guys on their first try. Naruto nodded slowly, and began to try again with the same result. Grumbling, he repeated the process. I won't give up. Meanwhile, the nearby legendary perverted former student and teacher of two different Hokages watched them concealed in the brush and stared at Sakura in wonder, mouthing her innocent choice of words. Did she just say, "That's the perfect inspiration for the dialogue in my next chapter"? Sakura watched in wonder as Naruto relentlessly attempted again and again for several hours to cause the small ball to explode. Growling and panting from exhaustion, he slid to his knees, squeezing the ball tightly in his hand. What am I doing wrong? I need to learn this, for Sakura-chan. Hey Naruto, are you using enough chakra? I think I understand what you're trying to do, but the force you're using seems too little. He looked at her wide-eyed. I have to use more. I'll gather it till it hurts. Rising to his feet, he grinned. Thanks Sakura-chan, I'll try that. Summoning his chakra, he concentrated on molding until he felt the burn before trying. This time, the ball sprang a leak. See Naruto, you did it, she cheered, despite not knowing what this training would accomplish. Jiraiya dropped in on them. It's a start for sure, now let's get moving. There's a town up ahead we can rest in if we make good time. Naruto turned to Sakura, remembering his earlier embarrassment. She stood on one leg and hooked her left arm over his shoulder, giving him a wry smirk. Why is she smiling at me like that? He swallowed nervously, wrapping her arms around her, lifting her up. When she mewed and snuggled into his chest, he had to stop himself from dropping her. This is going to be a long trip. At least she's not hitting me. So they traveled quietly through the forests and towns for several days. Jiraiya would have the two of them wait in the wilderness unless they were to stay in a room as he continued his research and searching for leads of his estranged teammate of old. During these times, Naruto would try increasing the power under Sakura's watchful eye to progress through his training. He became very thankful of her advice and help in concentrating, something he never had the knack for. Ironically, the day he managed to burst a rubber ball, Jiraiya returned with tidings for the two of them. Jiraiya explained she had been seen in the area, and it was likely that she would be found in a bar or gambling parlor. But when asked who she was, he merely said it'd be a surprise, befuddling the genins. So this time, the elder man led the two ninjas in training into the largest city they had laid eyes on. Sakura tugged gently on Naruto's shirt, grabbing his attention. Naruto, can you set me down please? I don't really want to be seen being carried through a city. He nodded slowly, gently setting her down, and she balanced on her left foot, guiding him to her right side. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. She felt silly hopping on one leg while the good part of her right arm wrapped around the blonde's shoulders for balance. A skilled medical ninja is somewhere in this town. She shivered slightly at a disturbing mental image of a drunk doctor looking at her in a gambling hall. What kind of medical ninja hangs around in bars and gambles? The pink-haired genin hobbled along with her Naruto crutch, taking in the sights of the town. She hadn't seen a city with paved streets, a freshly laid cobblestone, the edges not being weathered dull by time, wind, rain, and traffic felt unnaturally hard through her sandal. The late afternoon sun shone high overhead, basking the rows of houses, shops, and other buildings that flanked the wide streets in a bright light. Townsfolk filled the street, moving hither and thither, some with baskets going about their business in the bustling city. The cries of vendors hawking their wares were drowned out by the crowded streets of activity that weaved a cacophony of urban living of the era. Sakura quickly concluded that the city was too noisy and busy for her tastes, preferring the quiet and familiar life she had in Konoha. Her heart sank at the memory, and she slumped to her side, putting more weight on her blonde friend. Ero Sennin, what exactly are we looking for? Naruto supported Sakura, and questioned their escort. The Sannin stroked his chin in thought, and looked around. How about you two enjoy the town for a bit, and I'll see what I can find. He rubbed his hands together in a lecherous grin. Naruto growled at him in response, Ero Sennin, you'd better not just be doing more research. Sakura-chan is hurt. Humph, you're no fun. But don't worry, I'll find who we're looking for. Have fun you two. And he vanished before either could protest. What an irritating man. She frowned, and looked to Naruto. So what do we do now? I guess we can look around the town, and maybe get something to eat together. His eyes widened and he stiffened. You mean like a date, Sakura-chan? She froze. Well, I guess it can't hurt. He has done a lot for me. She laughed to herself, swishing her hair with a shake of her head. Who'd ever thought I'd actually go on a date with Naruto? But I have to admit, I'm glad it's Naruto I'm stuck with. I can't think of anyone else who could have made any of this feel easier. Not even Sasuke. He wouldn't have been supportive or helpful. She gave him a fond smile. Find Naruto a date, but don't get any ideas. Now let's go that way. She pointed down a random street, not really caring where they ended up. They wandered into another wide street filled with small shops and stalls of vendors the likes of which they had never seen in Konoha. They are selling so much crap here. Many of the stands were filled with the odd assortment of trinkets that had no practical application other than taking up space. The road was well worn, the rough edges of the cobblestone dulled by the passage of time. People filled the streets, dressed in the garbs of the lower class, trafficking in every direction in a seemingly endless stream. Both genin couldn't help but stare in awe at the sheer volume of bustling activity the town offered. Leaning on her living crutch, Sakura hobbled about leading them around aimlessly. She'd nod and comment on the many things Naruto would enthusiastically point out, mostly useless trinkets, decorative masks, and other eye-catching objects. When they finally came to a small shop that appeared to sell weapons, they shared a nod. Sakura was one who took pride in always having enough supplies, and she had been worried at her half-full kunai pouch. The many battles without a real opportunity to restock on supplies took its toll. Entering the door, she hopped over the threshold, clinging to Naruto while her eyes scanned the dim room. The building had no windows, and drew all of its light from two small lamps in opposing corners. Swords and exotic weaponry of all shapes and sizes lined the dark wooden walls. Moving closer, she frowned in disapproval when she saw so many of the articles had ornate handles and tips, with intricate designs. Many appeared to be made with different materials fused together. Glancing at a wall labeled shinobi tools, they pored over many blades of various lengths and purposes, throwing stars, and kunai. She shook her head at the sight. Whoever crafted the many weapons lining the wall had obviously spent more time and effort in the appearance than the purpose. Selecting a random kunai, she could instantly tell that it, and possibly all the weapons in the shop, were misbalanced and could cost the user his or her life in any real combat situation. Many had too heavy handles, or subtle changes to the design and shape sacrificing efficiency and balance for aesthetics. Clucking her tongue, she sat it down. The shop must cater to fools or collectors, with even higher prices than a standard counterpart of a particular item. They seem like such a waste, right, Naruto? She turned her attention to the blonde, and nearly groaned seeing the fascination in his eyes as he scanned many of the articles. Fools indeed, but he's my fool. The cough of someone clearing his throat came from behind the two genin. She quickly turned, and looked at whom she could only guess was the proprietor of the establishment. A short, swarthy man rolled his eyes and gruffly spat out. Can I help you too? Maybe they have some usable weapons not on display. She sighed, and asked the irritated shopkeeper. You wouldn't happen to have any properly balanced kunai, would you? These are balanced all wrong. The man's eyes narrowed on them, and she could see the cold look in his gaze. Are you two ninja? She nodded hesitantly while Naruto remained silent, glaring at the man. That is all our stock, if you aren't going to buy, leave. Inner Sakura screamed at the man's rudeness, desiring to smash him. Not wanting to make a scene, she ushered Naruto out. What was with that guy? His eyes were so cold. The look when someone refuses to recognize your existence. He grumbled when the light of the sun again shone on the pair as they meandered toward a clear spot to the side of the road. She frowned at his words. Is that how it is to be shunned? Naruto, it's okay, Sakura-chan, we shouldn't buy stuff we don't need. She could only nod in agreement after remembering his budget. She was about to reply and suggest they look elsewhere when both of them were sent sprawling into the side of a nearby alley. She stumbled to the ground on her back, groaning at the pain in her wrist from when her and instinctively went out to slow her fall, and her jostled leg. Looking around, she saw Naruto was slowly rising to his feet. Large shadows cast over them, and she directed her eyes toward the street. A large man in a dark rugged cloak stood pulling out a short knife, his back to street. Is he trying to mug us? Inner Sakura roared and made a punching motion. Shanaru, time to kick his ass. Naruto growled at the man standing in front of her. You bastard, what are you trying to do? The man remained silent and dashed forward with great speed, lunging toward Naruto with his knife. Those movements, he's a ninja. Naruto leapt to the side, and punched forward to have the assailant lithely dodge his strike. Not wanting to waste time on someone who knocked down both he and his Sakura, Naruto dropped low and swiped his feet around before summoning several clones. The man had gravely underestimated Naruto, who still wore plain-looking clothes and had obviously not expected an opponent to know anything near the level of Kage Bunshin. Blocking another punch, He fell victim to the barrage of kicks to the start of Naruto's personally named clone combination. Finishing with a downward kick, he smashed the man's face into the hard ground. Quickly moving to her side, he reached down, pulling her up. "Are you okay, Sakura-chan?" She nodded, and turned to the unconscious man, wincing at the damage done to his face. "Do you think he was just a thief? His movements seemed too fast to be just a bandit." Naruto shrugged, while she leaned down slowly, and filched through a filled pocket, gasping at its contents. "Nah, Naruto, look." She held up a folded protector with a music note emblazoned in the center. "He wasn't much of a threat, but I don't think it's a coincidence that a sound nin attacked us. We have to be careful. The shopkeeper may have been this guy's friend. We shouldn't tell anyone else we're ninja." Naruto's face scrunched up in thought before nodding. She stood upward, leaning on him again. "Ready, Sakura-chan? Let's go look some more." He doesn't let it bother him. Emerging back onto the street, she let Naruto choose the direction for a while. Stray thoughts and worry that they may forever be hunted by the sound ate at her security. Sakura hugged herself closer to her sturdy companion. As they walked, she slowly reflected on all that had happened, mechanically following his movements. Was Naruto always this reliable? I feel safe and complete with him now. As if he has always belonged there. She awoke from her daze when Naruto had stopped talking to a middle-aged woman selling what appeared to be some form of raffle tickets. Before she could object, he had already purchased one and began looking it over. "Naruto, I thought you weren't going to buy things we don't need." She conked him on the head as she scolded him. "Sorry. You weren't saying anything and I just felt lucky. I can't take my eyes off him for a minute, Shinobu." She yanked the ticket from his grasp and was about to toss it when she looked closer. Inner Sakura gaped as she read the parchment. Naruto, you won." He cheered, at her peering at the ticket. "Really? That's great, Sakura-chan." Collecting his price, he patted his now twice as fat hideous Gamma-chan. "I always feel lucky with you," he exclaimed in a grin, splitting his face in half. Sakura blushed and mumbled, embarrassed that she scolding him, even if she had reason to do so, backfired like that. Must be Naruto's karma. Her stomach growled loudly, and Naruto looked at her, causing her cheeks to flare redder. "Should we go eat now, Sakura-chan?" Shyly nodding, she pointed toward a cafe. "Yay, let's try there." Entering the establishment, they ordered a meal at the counter and soon were seated toward the back end in a small booth. While picking at her food, she looked around. It seemed similar to many places she had eaten at before in Konoha. A well-lit room, a few booths and tables scattered about. There was nothing eye-catching about interior, but it was clean, something she could appreciate after passing through many villages in the last week on their slow search. Naruto gulped down his meal with the grace and patience of a wild animal, and she couldn't help but roll her eyes with a small grin at his antics. She glanced about. The place did not seem to have many customers. At a nearby table she saw two young women, one a gorgeous busty blonde wearing a green jacket, while the other a brunette wore a black traditional kimono. Turning back to her meal, they continued to eat in relative quiet for a few moments until he arrived. Jiraiya entered the building as if he owned the place, ordering a large bottle of sake and moving toward them. He paused, looking at the other table with what she could only identify as recognition. He patted Naruto on the back. "Figures, you two find her and you don't even know what she looks like. Oi Tsunade, it's good to see you again." Jiraiya motioned for her and Naruto to move and join the other table. Sakura mouthed the name, and it dawned on her that the medic they had been searching for was the legendary Kunoichi medic of the Sannin. The blonde scoffed at their invasion of her table. "Humph, what do you want, Jiraiya?" The large man poured a glass filled with sake before taking a swig, grinning at the legendary Kunoichi, and peering downward at her equally legendary bust. "It's good to see you too, Tsunade." Her eyes narrowed on him, and she started a cat-like hiss until he made eye contact. "I have bad news of sorts, and we have come to ask for your assistance. Naruto, Sakura, this is my old teammate. She looks so young though. It must be a genjutsu. Assistance in what? She asked suspiciously, and what's this bad news? Jiraiya sighed wearily, looking away from the table. Konoha is broken. Orochimaru killed Sensei and the village is burned. These two are the only survivors I found, but I think others are out there. Worse, an organization known as Akatsuki of S-Class Nuke Nin are after the boy, and the girl here has some shattered bones that we'd ask if you'd treat. The brunette gasped, and sputtered her drink looking at the toad sage wide-eyed. Tsunade's eyes flickered and she downed another cup of her drink. The dark-haired woman spoke, What? Konoha is destroyed. Tsunade-sama, what do we do? The surly blonde glanced at Naruto. Nothing. I cut my ties with the village a long time ago, the Hokages were fools. Sakura's face fell at the comment. She's so cold. Naruto growled, jumping to the table. Who are you to call the Hokages fools? I don't care if you are an old woman, anyone who badmouths them deserves a punch in the face. They gave their lives to protect the village. Being Hokage is my dream, and even though the village is gone, I will still surpass all of them and protect anyone that survived. Tsunade looked troubled for a moment at his declaration before jumping into action, while Sakura tried to calm her teammate, Naruto. Don't you call me an old woman. Tsunade climbed toward him half on the table grinning maliciously. And what are you going to do about it? You want to take this outside? She started to pull on his arm, to get him to sit back down. Naruto, you fool, you can't pick a fight with her. Yes, I won't run away. I'll knock that grin off your face, Tsunade Bakken. Inner Sakura animatedly scolded at Naruto at how much of a fool he was, as the two blondes made for the door in a huff. Hopping awkwardly, she rose to her good leg and was relieved when the dark-haired woman helped her out. Jiraiya only observed the two in quiet amusement. Dusk had come early, and the sun had just set, shrouding the now quiet street in darkness. Tsunade held up a single finger, waving it about in a mocking manner in the street across from Naruto, who squared off. One finger is all it will take. He growled and charged forward in a futile attempt to attack her, which she blocked with her finger. She flicked at him, causing Sakura to gape that the small flick sent her teammate sprawling backward. Not about to give up, the Kyuubi vessel poured chakra into his left hand and began the curious motion of spinning chakra. Wow, that looks so cool. Is that what he was training with those balls for? Jiraiya grinned and Tsunade's eyes widened as Naruto charged for her with the whirling blue orb. She slammed his hand into the ground and the earth split in a spiral pattern where his hand impacted. Tsunade then flicked him in the forehead, ending the duel, as he slammed against the ground. Jiraiya, how could you teach him that technique? No wonder he has a big head now. You're putting big ideas that he could be as good as a Hokage in this weak brat's little head. The blonde mocked Naruto, as he slowly pulled himself out of the dirt. Hobbling forward, Sakura cried out. Naruto isn't weak, and he will be as strong as a Hokage. That's his dream and you have no right to mock it. Tsunade stiffened, and Naruto mouthed Sakura's name under his breath with his eyes locked on her in a soft smile. Sakura was it. You've got guts. I'll see if I can heal you in a bit. And I'll tell you what. If this brat can master that move in a week, I'll admit I was wrong and that he can be strong, and I'll even give him this necklace. She held up a glistening blue gem on a cord around her neck. And if he can't, then you don't bother me again and I keep everything in this. She pulled out a very fat-looking frog wallet, before stuffing it back in her pocket. What a bitch. Naruto isn't even close on the next step of the training. Sakura was about to protest, calling the Sannin out on the unfair bet, when Naruto laughed and pointed at her. Why would I want a junky necklace like that? Tsunade smiles wryly. This necklace was worn by the Shadaime Hokage, and is worth several mountains. That's a lot of money, but he isn't ready yet. Naruto gaped at the appraisal, and smiled. You're on, Tsunade Bakken. Get ready to hand it over in a week. Sakura slapped at her own face, groaning. Naruto, there goes our money. Naruto panted, exhausted from his constant training. Sakura-chan defended me, I have to win this to be worth her words. He collapsed in the dark yard beneath the hotel, sprawling out, flexing his burning hand. My hand burns. But at least Tsunade Bakken is healing Sakura-chan now. He closed his eyes, resting until his next attempt. He heard the sound of someone approaching but stayed still. Naruto. While researching, I heard an interesting rumor. Figures, Ero Sennin was researching. I heard that there's a gathering of Konoha survivors staying somewhere near the border. It's probably a 2 days journey from here. Survivors. But it is only a rumor, so we have to check it out. We'll leave in the morning. Sakura should be fine by then. But Ero Sennin, my bet with the old hag. Naruto bounded to his feet, rounding on his sensei. Naruto, sometimes you need to know when to cut your losses. I'd say this is a bit more important than a bet you cannot win. The final step is harder than the other two by a long shot. The white-haired man finished, before leaving toward the hotel. I don't want to run away from the bet, but it could be our friends. Naruto sighed. It was good news. He stretched and went to see if Sakura was feeling better and to get some rest for the night. Flexing her hand carefully, she stared down at her wrist in disbelief. Tsunade-sama is amazing. Medical jutsus are so cool. She slowly stood up, testing weight on her healed legs. It doesn't even hurt now. Well, how is it now? She smiled, and twirled on her right leg, losing her balance but catching herself. Letting out a shy chuckle, she answered. Thank you so much. They feel fine, but just a bit stiff. I almost fell on my face in front of her. That would have been embarrassing. Shanaru. The blonde only nodded curtly, turning her eyes away. Whatever, now just don't get busted up again. She said dismissively, leaving the room. Sakura frowned. She's still so cold. Sitting on the bed, she looked about the room she was sharing with Naruto and his perverted sensei. At least he stays out all night. She didn't want to think past on where the man was till odd hours of the night. The door started to open and her mood instantly brightened at the sight of Naruto. A tired and dirty Naruto. Naruto, what happened to you? He sheepishly put his arms behind his head, entering the room. You all better. Sakura-chan was just training on the Rasengan. He then huffed, sitting on the floor. I'm fine now, but what's wrong? She questioned at his odd behavior. He works so hard. He hasn't been that goofy either in a long time now. He shook his head. Ero Sennin heard a rumor about possible survivors and said we'd leave tomorrow to go check it out. It's a 2-day journey. Our friends. Naruto, that's great news. Why do you seem troubled? She commented, rising to her feet. Oh, I'm happy about that. I just don't want Tsunade Bakken to think I'm running out on the bet. I'm going to win it, but if we leave. Naruto muttered, lying back on his bed mat. She thought for a moment. His Nindo, he takes his promises so seriously. What if, Naruto, you said it was 2 days away? He nodded slowly. Well, what if you practice on the way and we check it out? Even if we find them, it doesn't mean we can't make a trip back here if you finish it. He bolted upright, beaming sincerely at her. That's perfect. You're so smart, Sakura-chan. She smiled, turning away, blushing slightly. Really, Naruto, it doesn't take a genius to think of an idea like that. Thank you. So why don't we get some rest? The following day, the three trekked toward the rumored area. Sakura felt relieved that she could move again on her own, even if she could not come near the pace her companions were capable of. Even if she was at her prime, she ruefully thought. A few hours before dusk, Jiraiya directed them to set up a camp. He suggested since they made good time, Naruto could get more of his training in. Soon enough, she was watching said blonde put his all in the retaining power and rotation training. After seeing the technique in action, she had asked Tsunade just what technique the Rasengan was. An A-rank jutsu. It took the Yondaime a long time, and he wants to complete it in a week. I wish I knew how to help him. Sakura yawned tiredly, exhausted from pushing herself. She hadn't wanted to slow down Naruto, and sat up to head for her bedroll provided by the Sannin. Naruto, good luck with your training. I'm going to sleep. He smiled and bid her a good night and waved with a burnt hand. Don't push yourself too hard, Naruto. Climbing into her blankets, she let herself drift to sleep. A loud, frustrated shout awoke Sakura with a start. She glanced about the camp. The grass and underbrush sparkled as the sun's rays of dawn's first light reflected off the morning dew. Naruto. He's still training. She spotted him panting his back to a nearby tree. Oh, sorry if I woke you up. Good morning, Sakura-chan. He chirped happily, pushing himself to his feet. He didn't sleep at all. She looked about camp, not seeing any other bedrolls. It's okay. Where is Ero Jiraiya-sama? Naruto almost got me calling him that. She sat up, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes before stretching into a deep yawn. She was answered by silence. Naruto. Sakura opened her eyes and looked to her quiet friend, freezing at what she saw. What are they doing here? She pushed herself out of her bedroll, gripping at a kunai with trembling hands, staring at the tall cloaked forms of the Akatsuki that attacked them days before. Where's Jiraiya? How did they find us here? Oh God, Naruto, run! She tried to stand up, finding her body refusing every command. I can't move. Is this a genjutsu? She stared in horror as Uchiha Itachi thrust a short blade into the still Naruto, pinning him against a tree. He gasped in pain, clutching at his shoulder and began stuttering. Sakura-chan, run! He screamed again as another blade was driven into his chest. Hey, Itachi, save some for me. I owe him one. Kisame chuckled heartily, his hand gripping tightly to the large bandage-wrapped weapon. She tried to scream, to move, to do anything. She watched with tears streaming down her face as the giant nuke nin raised the weapon and hewed off Naruto's right leg in a wide horizontal arc. Naruto. Naruto thrashed, slumping to the ground while roaring in anguish. Cackling with glee, he rubbed that flat side of his blade and shaved at the crumpled up blonde's other leg, blood pouring out onto the ground. He groaned out her name, pleading her to get away in a broken voice. Sakura. Run please, I can't do anything for him. Oh God, Naruto. Naruto. She shrieked at the top of her lungs, diving up from her blankets toward her teammate as the shark face brought his weapon over his head, striking downward in a spray of blood. She stared in disbelief at her hands covered in blood. Naruto's blood. She looked upward slowly, her heart thundering against her chest. She closed her eyes as Itachi appeared over her, hefting a blade. I'm coming, Naruto. She braced herself, as the Uchiha thrust the blade toward her, and then the world dissolved. Damn it. Why can't I do this? He gasped for breath, clutching his burnt and aching hand. He looked up to the starry sky, the half-moon bathing the forest floor with its silvery light. With a heavy yawn, he started back for the camp to get some sleep. A strangled cry broke the quiet of the night. Naruto. That's Sakura-chan. Panic swelled within him as he dashed through the trees, losing his balance, sprawling into the clearing where their bedrolls were laid out. He quickly knelt by her side, as she tossed in a fitful slumber, sweat dripping down her face, and her rosy tresses in disarray. She's having a nightmare. Ero Sennin must still be scouting ahead somewhere. Sakura-chan, wake up. He carefully set his hands on her shoulders, and began to shake her awake gently. The rosette thrashed, and screamed, one of her fists striking forward, catching him on the cheek. He winced and batted her hand away. Sakura-chan, please wake up. Her emerald eyes shot open and frantically darted around as she took deep, ragged breaths. Her hands tightened around his upper arms. Naruto. I'm here, Sakura-chan, you were having a nightmare, I think. The distraught girl catapulted onto him, wrapping her arms tightly on him, and they fell in a heap on the ground as she cried into the crook where his neck met his shoulder. Sakura-chan. You're alive, don't ever leave me, Naruto. I can't lose you. You're all I have left. She cried in relief, clinging to him as if her life depended on it. She had a nightmare about me. He gently patted her back, painfully aware of how vulnerable she was right now. I promise Sakura-chan, I won't leave you. He wrapped his arms around her securely as she snuggled into his chest. Naruto continued to comfort her, keeping her pressed close, not knowing what else to do. Her breathing grew steady, and he brushed some pink bangs from her forehead. She looks peaceful now. When the blonde was sure she was peacefully asleep, he attempted to unravel himself from the slumbering girl, finding her grip to only tighten. Sakura stirred and mumbled, "You promised Naruto." He swallowed and lay down next to her. "I'll protect you, Sakura-chan." Still tangled in her arms, he let sleep claim him. Well, well, what do we have here? The deep amused voice of Jiraiya awoke Sakura from her peaceful slumber. She mumbled, swatting a hand toward the Sannin and burying her face into her pillow. She felt warm and safe, and faltered at the thought of abandoning this feeling of security to spend the day running through the trees. Sakura-chan, why can't they just let me sleep? Shanaru. She reluctantly pressed up from her warm pillow and sat up. The sight of Jiraiya leering at her caused her to feel a little self-conscious, and she looked down to see a wide-eyed Naruto pressed beneath her. She shivered, remembering that horrible dream. Oh, I punched Naruto, then clung to him like an oversized plushie last night. What's he going to think? Her face heated up, and she buried it into her hands, while Naruto pulled his arms from around her that were previously pinned by her position. The older ninja grinned down at them. Well, once you two are done snuggling, we'll get a move on. We should reach the area this afternoon if we go by yesterday's pace. Sakura nodded, and climbed off Naruto, pulling him up. She winced, placing her cool fingers on his bruised cheek. Sorry Naruto, Naruto hushed her, standing up. It's alright Sakura-chan, I'll keep my promise, let's get going. Thank you Naruto. She smiled and shakily rose to her feet. I can be strong with you here. They gathered their belongings and departed for their destination. The afternoon saw the trio overlooking the ruins of a small ramshackle town. Aro Senin, this is the place. It looks like it has been abandoned for months. Sakura nodded in agreement. Yes, but keep in mind. If any Konoha shinobi are here, they would likely be hiding. Orochimaru is not someone to leave anything half done. It looks like a big area to check. We should split up, you two can stay together. We'll meet back here in 2 hours whether we find people or not, okay? The Toad Sage gave the two orders, and left to scope out his side of the ruins. Acknowledging the plan, the two genin walked to the right edge of the ruined town. I have a bad feeling. Sakura stood by his side, kunai in hand scanning the buildings. The town was deteriorated from the slow passage of time and lack of maintenance. Some roads and houses were torn, evidence pointing toward recent harsh weather conditions. What exactly are we looking for Sakura-chan? They passed another small building with a collapsed roof, the standing walls cracked and brittle-looking rotten wood. She shrugged, then pointed, wait, there. That building has a seal on it. Naruto strained his eyes, searching for what she was pointing at. A free-standing building stood ahead, with most of its walls and roof still intact. She walked up, glancing at a tag right in front of him. It's a trap, and looks like it was set recently, though any ninja should see this. It proves someone is here though. I didn't see it. Disarming the traps carefully, Sakura nodded at him to follow and they entered the standing dark building. Naruto grumbled, pushing past broken boards and furniture cluttering the floor. It's creepy here, would people really stay in a place like this? Sakura shook her head. I don't know, but maybe our friends are hiding somewhere here. With sound nin in towns, maybe they feel safer out in a place like this. She didn't sound convinced herself and pointed toward a basement staircase. I see lights coming from down there. Hope strained in her voice, and the two quickly approached the creaky stairs. Descending slowly, the pair entered into a well-lit and unusually spacious basement, a large hall feeding into the wide room. Sakura frowned. I don't see anyone. He looked about, scanning piles of discarded and broken furniture. Naruto stepped down to the final step and a click echoed throughout the room. Naruto, a trap. She hauled him up as a series of shuriken thunked into the wooden wall from above the stairs. She rounded on him and in a scolding tone berated him. You have to be careful. There are obviously lots of traps around. Sorry Sakura-chan, he nervously chuckled, scratching at his neck. If a trap doesn't kill me, Sakura-chan will. Who's there? A shrill female voice startled both genin, and they stared down the basement hall. Naruto looked to his friend, trusting her judgment in answering. She was about to say something when the voice came up again. Sakura, is that you? A slim figure stepped into the light. Ino, you're alive, Sakura exclaimed, jumping forward toward her in ecstatic glee while Naruto tensed. Ino stood haughtily, smiling widely, with her long platinum hair in her usual ponytail behind and wearing her usual ninja garb. Something is wrong. We were so worried about you, Sakura. No one knew where you guys were. Her eyes narrowed on him. And you, Naruto, where's Sasuke-kun? Sakura frowned, and shook her head. He, is gone. Who else is here, Ino? Ino grinned, giving a victory sign. All of us rookies and some others. As soon as the attack went bad, we were woken from the genjutsu and headed out as a group. Sakura cheered, jumping, as Kakashi-sensei here. Ino nodded cheerfully. He helped Shikamaru, Choji, myself and the others escape from the genjutsu. Sakura nodded gleefully, praising their sensei, but Naruto froze, his fist tightening. Shikamaru went with us into the forest after Sasuke. He eyed over the chatty Ino, sizing her up, and it dawned on him. Of course, I should have seen it earlier. Naruto growled, and punched the blonde in her face, sending her flying into the wall. Naruto? She questioned, rubbing her cheek. Sakura conked him on the head and grabbed his shirt, starting to throttle him. Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Sakura, that's not Ino. Ino wouldn't just sit there after being punched. And Ino's hair was short still from your fight, remember? A tear spilled down his face, remembering Shikamaru's sacrifice. And remember Shikamaru, he was with us, and stayed so we could escape those ninja. Sakura paled, and looked to the blonde pulling herself off the floor. I must say, Naruto-kun, I'm impressed you of all people would notice subtleties like that. I must be getting a bit sloppy, but to my credit I didn't expect the two of you to appear here, so I had little time to prepare. The imposter Ino smiled smugly at the pair. Sakura shivered, holding her weapon out as Naruto clenched his fists. Who the hell are you? Naruto clenched his fist tightly in a threatening manner, pushing himself in front of Sakura. The Ino imposter continued her devilish smile. I suppose it couldn't hurt that you know the truth, Naruto-kun. A puff of smoke surrounded the blonde, revealing a silver-haired youth, in a purple garb with glasses. Both Team 7 members instantly recognized him and gaped. Kabuto, why would you pretend to be Ino? Naruto yelled, pointing. Sakura tugged at his shirt. Naruto, his forehead protector. He glanced at the silvery metal, and his eyes narrowed on the engraved single music note. Why, Kabuto, I thought you were one of our friends, the forest. What are you doing here? And the sound? He shouted as he looked into the eyes of the silver-haired boy. I was making sure Sasuke-kun passed. He would have failed thanks to you two if I hadn't stepped in, and Orochimaru-sama's plans would have been disrupted. As for why I'm here, I just came to check up on how those stationed here to oversee the Konoha ninjas lured by our traps are properly disposed of. The traitor pulled out a sack, and started to scatter its contents onto the floor. Scratched forehead protectors with the symbol of the leaf clattered on the cold stone floor, the cloth on many spattered with blood and ripped in various places. Naruto growled and lunged for the spy, who deftly stepped aside. You always charge into everything so violently, Naruto-kun. The one thing I learned about you during the exam is, you are talentless as a ninja. Barros, take care of them. A grim-looking man stepped out from the wall. Naruto spun to the new arrival, only to be lifted by shirt and tossed backward into Sakura, sending both crashing to the floor. Sakura-chan, stay back. He sprang to his feet quickly, performing Cage Bunshin, filling the basement with a dozen clones. Circling the two sound nin, he scoped out the newer appointment. It was a gargantuan man, with rippling muscles, wearing a black and gray vest. A sound protector glittered on his forehead underneath a bald head. With a shout, Naruto surged forward with his clones attempting to attack from all angles. Kabuto shrugged impassively, ignoring the oncoming Narutos, while the Baldy grinned and clapped his hands together. He heard Sakura gasp behind him, and both he and his clones gaped as the man grew an extra pair of arms. In a whirlwind display of dexterity, the four-armed man struck out with his limbs, each hit connecting with a clone. The arms would alternate between defense and offense, giving the larger man an edge in taijutsu, even considering Naruto's advantage in numbers. Finally, the real Naruto took a fist to the gut, and reeled backward to the floor. Naruto. Shanaru. Sakura dashed ahead, ducking under a sweep, and tossing her readied kunai at the quad arm. His upper left arm caught it easily, and he plucked her out of the air with his right arm. Damn it. Naruto stood up, summoning more clones, and rushed to rescue his teammate. Behind them, Kabuto scoffed. And Sakura-san, where Naruto is talentless, you just held both him and Sasuke-kun back. Naruto watched Sakura visibly flinch at the words in the grasp of the man. Sakura-chan, that's not true. The clones dashed ahead, readying a barrage of projectiles, but quickly hesitated when the man hefted Sakura as a shield. What do? I can't risk hitting Sakura-chan. An idea flashed in his mind, he just had to get under the opponent. The clone slid below in a low kick, targeting the man's legs. He threw a shrieking Sakura toward the ground, and jumped over the Narutos, slamming four fists into the floor. Naruto caught her, breaking her fall, and staggered backward from the rippling ground. You okay, Sakura-chan? She bit her lip and nodded. Setting her on her feet, he looked up, seeing the four arms charge forward. Jumping in front of his teammate, he took the blow as the man barreled into him, knocking the wind out as he careened backward. I beat Gaara, this guy is nothing. A great portion of his chakra reserve swirled around him, and he channeled it into his legs for a quick attack. Jumping off the wall, he rocketed himself into the man, catching his forehead into the guy's chest. His undispelled clones quickly kicked him into the air as he flipped, spinning into a drop kick, sending him face first into the floor. The remaining clones then turned toward Kabuto, getting ready for another charge. The silver-haired youth chuckled. Why, Naruto-kun, it appears you've improved. He twirled a kunai around in his hand before catching it in his palm. But you're still a pathetic ninja. But on the bright side, at least you aren't as useless and a burden as Sakura-san. The Snake Sanin's lieutenant deftly dodged the many attacks from the clones, disrupting them with swift blows and kicks. During the melee, as the final clone was dispelled, he threw the kunai, targeting the still Sakura. She wavered on her feet, staring toward the incoming kunai. Seeing the throw, the blonde dived forward, catching the knife in the back. He gripped it tightly in a bloody hand. Sakura, snap out of it. She isn't acting like herself. I have to end this. He threw the kunai toward their enemy, and held out his palm, gathering chakra. Kabuto raised his eyebrow as the Jinchuriki formed an incomplete Rasengan. It's still a damaging technique, here I go. Charging forward, Naruto thrust the twirling orb toward the sound nin. Only to have his wrist caught to be directed into the ground. Not wasting any time, an eerie glow encased Kabuto's right hand, and he patted at Naruto's thigh. A sharp pain shocked through his right leg, and he stumbled to the ground. What the hell was that? He tried pushing himself off, before a sharp kick slammed into his chest, before pushing its weight down. His lungs burned for air, and he flailed for the offending leg. You have no grace, your motions are all that of a wild animal. You can't hope to hit a moving target with such a sweeping motion. Damn it. I need some way to beat him, he's so fast. Stop it! Sakura screamed at Kabuto, who delivered another kick into the downed Naruto. Sakura-chan can't fight him, he'll kill her. His eyes blurred, over the form of the fallen quad-armed man in front of him. Damn it, I have to do something. If only I had more arms. His mind racked for answers, ignoring the pain in his chest and thigh. More arms, of course. Sakura surged forward, in a vain attempt to harm their silver-haired enemy. Kabuto readied a kunai in preparation to take her charge. Shit. No time. Naruto pushed himself up with some of his remaining chakra, summoning a second clone in Sakura's path. He wavered on his leg, the torn muscles preventing quicker movements. Naruto. She stopped, from running into his backside questioning him. Please stay back Sakura-chan, you can't take him. Kabuto lunged forward at Naruto with the knife. He caught the blade through his hand. Now you're not a moving target. Blood spurted out of his impaled hand and it throbbed in pain, but he tightened his grip on the Kabuto's fist, while he stretched his other palm out. I hope this works. Using the extra clone arms, he formed the Rasengan using his original hand as a container, and thrust it into his immobile opponent. He smiled watching Kabuto spin wildly backward into the wall, after feeling a brief pressure in his chest. His breathing grew ragged as his vision swam and he blacked out. Stay safe Sakura-chan. Eyes widening, Sakura gaped as Kabuto spiraled backward, slamming into the wall, shaking the very foundation of the building. He did it. He mastered it in less than a week. Her brief joy quickly was then wrecked by reality, as Naruto collapsed forward in front of her. Naruto. She ran to his side, turning him on his back. I don't see any wounds. Kabuto's attacks looked like what Tsunade-sama did, medical jutsu. A bone-chilling laugh caused her to tremble and look up. Kabuto pushed himself to his knees, the grievous wound in his stomach sent forth steam and began to regenerate. How can he still be alive and able to move? My Sakura-san, you really are worthless. He's dead, you know. I attacked at his heart, and I don't think anything he has up his sleeve will save him now. He coughed, finding his way to his feet. That can't be. She stared down at the fallen form of Naruto, and put her head to his chest. His heartbeat is so dull. All his dreams are gone now. And it is your fault. If you weren't slowing him down and needing him to protect you, he could have done much more on his own. Tears stung at her eyes, remembering Naruto jump in the way of all the attacks directed at her. I just stood there. I just got in the way. I'm just a burden. He's right, Naruto, I'm sorry for being so weak. She threw herself over him and began to scream. You promised Naruto, you promised not to leave me. I'm sorry I was weak. I won't just watch your be back. She heard Kabuto stumble and looked toward him, tears spilling down her cheeks. He coughed and pulled out an explosive tag. Pathetic, you're just useless. But don't worry, you can die with him now. He threw the tag upward, and scampered down the dark hall. Sakura sat still, the building shaking around them, stray dust choking the air. I'm so sorry Naruto, I took your dreams away. She sputtered when his hand seized her wrist. Naruto weakly rasped, his now dim blue eyes catching her own. Stop believing his lies. I don't believe for a second that you're a burden to me. He collapsed again, his eyes shutting and his hand falling limply to his side. He's alive still. The ceiling and walls rattled, threatening to collapse, and she pulled his arm over her shoulder, and started to drag him up the crumbling stairs as the ceiling and walls collapsed around her. I have to get him out of here and find help, or he really will die. Summoning all her strength and determination, she hauled him up the stairs, coughing at the dust and jumping over the broken boards. Covered in scratches and dirt, she emerged in daylight, still dragging the unconscious Naruto. Her heart seized up when she saw her surroundings, and she threw herself protectively over Naruto. Around her stood 4 sound ninja, clad in full face masks and their black and gray uniforms. I can't fight these guys. Closing her eyes, she readied for the oncoming blows only to hear a loud explosion and screams. Opening her eyes, she saw the biggest frog she'd ever seen, the size of a large cart, smash and thrash the enemies with its long tongue. Jiraiya-sama. On cue, the large white-haired man appeared beside her. Shit. Sakura, what happened? I found some sound nin and knew instantly something was up. How's the brat? She pulled him up. He used the Rasengan, but the enemy said he attacked his heart with some kind of medical jutsu. Naruto's alive, but his heart is so faint. Jiraiya grabbed Naruto, and checked the seal. The Sannin continued examining further the condition of the weakening genin. This guy, he's living because he's too stubborn to die. Naruto, the Sannin tossed his student over his shoulder. Come, we must hurry. Between his will and the Kyuubi, he won't die right away, but neither can repair this damage. Sakura nodded dumbly, and sprinted after the white-haired man, eating a soldier pill and using the surplus energy to keep up. I promise to you, Naruto, I will become stronger for you. I won't just watch your back. So please, live.